Chapter 996. However, she wasn't alone. A green-skinned middle-aged woman followed closely behind her. Her aura seemed ordinary, no different from that of ordinary floral spirit. However, it didn't escape Su Yu's transparent eye. Ninth grade Almighty. Su Yu's pupils constricted slightly. Moreover, it wasn't just an ordinary ninth grade Almighty. Even the eldest senior brother of the Heaven's Craftsman faction was probably no match for this person. Could it be because of the previous experience of being kidnapped by the great Oriental family that the youngest granddaughter has an extra bodyguard? Su Yu thought to himself. Staring at the youngest granddaughter again, Su Yu fell into deep thought. At the same time, there were several other people who had discovered the youngest granddaughter. Senior brother, that must be the youngest granddaughter, right? Yu Liang asked, staring at the pretty girl. The eldest senior brother smiled. It shouldn't be wrong. The other 8 granddaughters are in isolation all year round and basically don't show up in the outside world. Only this youngest granddaughter often walks around the city. After confirming the identity, everyone's eyes flickered. Eldest senior brother, shall we strike now? Shayin asked, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. The rest of the students of the Heaven's Craftsman faction couldn't contain their excitement. Kidnapping the granddaughter of an all-creations old monster? Just hearing about it made them nervous and excited. No, the youngest granddaughter has an expert with her. If we act rashly, we'll only give her a chance to escape, the eldest senior brother said, waving the rope in his hand. Eldest senior brother waved the rope in his hand and said, when she comes close, this fairy binding rope will help us. However, just in case, everyone must hide in the surroundings to prevent the youngest granddaughter from escaping and causing the plan to fail. If the plan failed, the consequences would be unimaginable. Even if the yard master, who was an all-creations old monster, didn't show up, the floral spirits in the city would be enough to trap all of them, leaving no chance of escape. There's only one chance, so everyone must do their best, the eldest senior brother said, looking at Su Yu. Junior brother Su, your strength is unparalleled. This matter concerns everyone's escape from the disaster of flowers, so I hope you can help us too. Su Yu thought about it and nodded slightly. I'm in the same boat as everyone, so I'll do my best. If there's anything you need, please let me know. The eldest senior brother smiled gratefully. Thank you, Brother Su. There are 20 of us in total. When the fairy binding rope binds the 9th granddaughter, the expert following her will definitely intervene. I'll hold her off for now, but you guys have to take the opportunity to subdue the 9th granddaughter. The 9th granddaughter herself is an 8th grade almighty strong fighter, and she's very difficult to deal with. Only junior brother Su and junior brother Yu can contend with her, so the main task of subduing her will be left to the 2 of you. How about it? Does anyone have any objections? Hearing this, everyone thought for a moment and agreed. There was only one chance, and no one dared to slack off. In that case, get ready. Eldest senior brother's eyes flashed and he waved his hand. Everyone immediately dispersed. Su Yu and Yu Liang lurked in the southeast, ready to strike. Eldest senior brother held the immortal binding rope in his hand and controlled the bells on it. It emitted a heavenly sound and attracted the youngest granddaughter to come closer. It's really nice. The youngest granddaughter came over with a face full of curiosity. She blinked her big eyes that seemed like they could speak, expressing the innocence in her heart. The middle-aged woman behind her said cautiously, "Please be careful, those are challengers." The youngest granddaughter put her index finger in the corner of her mouth and turned a deaf ear to the words. Her eyes were fixed on the rope that emitted the heavenly sound, and she asked in a sweet voice that was as clear and melodious as silver bells, "Can I touch it?" Eldest senior brother smiled warmly. Of course. The youngest granddaughter's face was full of curiosity. She touched the immortal binding rope with her slender and fair index finger, which emitted the heavenly sound of the bells. The moment she touched it, a mysterious smile appeared at the corners of the eldest senior brother's mouth. The bells vibrated violently all of a sudden, and the sound it emitted changed from the heavenly sound to the urgent sound of a raging storm. All of a sudden, the intoxicated look on the faces of the plant demons changed abruptly, and they shrieked incessantly in pain. Many demons covered their heads with their hands, their bodies convulsing. The sound of the bells seemed to have a great negative impact on them. The youngest granddaughter was the first to bear the brunt of it. She trembled all over and held her head, looking like she was in great pain. Eldest senior brother's eyes sharpened, and he threw the immortal binding rope in front of him. Suddenly, the rope wrapped around the youngest granddaughter's hands and feet. The bells continued to ring loudly, emitting urgent sounds that caused the youngest granddaughter to fall into an even more painful state. However, the youngest granddaughter was still an 8th grade almighty, and she also had the yard master's bloodline. The virtual shadow of the daffodil above her head swayed gently, and drops of crystal-clear flower dew fell continuously. The pain on the youngest granddaughter's face eased, and 2 roots grew out from under her feet. They dug the ground, and her whole body sank into the depths of the earth. She was planning to use this method to escape. "You want to leave?" Eldest senior brother's eyes flashed. His left hand turned into a claw, and he grabbed the youngest granddaughter's arm. Swoosh! However, right at that moment, an emerald green branch suddenly lashed out. A residual shadow streaked across the void, and a few space cracks appeared as the branch lashed out. Eldest senior brother's face changed, and he had no choice but to change his claw into a fist to attack the incoming branch. With a muffled groan, the eldest senior brother's figure retreated, and a bloody mark appeared on his fist. The physical body of a 9th grade almighty was incomparably strong. Coupled with the protection of vital energy, a bloody mark appeared on the eldest senior brother's body. Indeed, none of you challengers are good people. The middle-aged woman's emerald green skin flickered continuously, and her eyes looked extremely gloomy. Eldest senior brother's face froze. After a simple exchange of blows, he could roughly determine that his opponent's strength might be above his own. "Junior brother Sue, junior brother you, I'll leave the youngest granddaughter to you. I'll hold off this old woman." Eldest senior brother bellowed, and took the initiative to attack. Yu Liang's eyes flashed, and he bellowed, "Go!" Crimson-red body. The essence and blood in Yu Liang's body boiled like boiling oil, and crackling sounds could be heard. His whole body strangely turned blood-red, and he looked like a jade man carved from red jade. "Open!" Yu Liang bellowed. He lifted his right foot and stomped on the ground. In an instant, the entire city of flower gardens trembled. The ground, with him as the center, shook violently, and the soil within 100 feet of the ground was forcefully rolled out. The youngest granddaughter, whose body had sunk into the ground, was also shaken out of the ground. She lay on the ground, moaning in pain. "Junior brother Su, what are you waiting for?" Yu Liang bellowed. Su Yu nodded and flew over. He came to a distance of 30 feet from the youngest granddaughter, and grabbed her thin shoulder. Seeing that Su Yu had successfully captured her, the people of the Heaven's Craftsman faction were exhilarated. "Junior brother Su, bring her here quickly." Eldest senior brother was overjoyed. Everything was going according to plan. Yu Liang and the others rushed toward Su Yu, ready to help him. Because their actions had completely enraged the floral demons, they all rushed over while shrieking. However, what stunned the students of the Heaven's Craftsman faction was that after Su Yu caught the youngest granddaughter, he did not hand her over. Instead, he threw out a wooden bird, stepped on it, and soared into the sky. "Junior brother Su, what are you doing?" Su Yu's unexpected action startled the people of the Heaven's Craftsman faction. Su Yu's face was expressionless. Floating in the middle of the garden, he said placidly, "I'm giving them a taste of their own medicine, of course." Yu Liang's face was filled with murderous intent. "Su, you're trying to get us killed." They had offended the floral demons of the city, but the youngest granddaughter had been kidnapped by Su Yu alone. "Ha ha, It's better to get you killed than to be killed by you, isn't it? Suyu said placidly. The eldest senior brother's pupils constricted, and his face darkened. Junior brother Su, aren't you being too presumptuous by insisting that we're trying to harm you? Bring back the youngest granddaughter, and we'll still be friends. From the beginning to the end, they had not done anything detrimental to Suyu. Of course, that was from their point of view. Presumptuous? I forgot to tell you that I'm not talented, but I know a little about the language of the floral demons. From the conversations of the floral demons of the city, I've learned some information that I shouldn't have known, Suyu said placidly. The floral language and the Mu language belonged to two different systems of writing. Suyu was far less proficient in the former than the latter, but he had some knowledge of it. At first, he had thought that by capturing the youngest granddaughter, he could force the yard master to let them use the transportation station. However, from the conversations of the floral demons, Suyu learned that the condition for using the transportation station was that a challenger had to marry one of the yard master's granddaughters. This was a rule set by the yard master herself. Rumor had it that the challenger of the great Oriental family had kidnapped one of the yard master's granddaughters and left through the transportation station. In fact, it was a lie made up by the eldest senior brother of the Heaven's Craftsman faction. With the ability of an all-creation's old monster, kidnapping her granddaughter was not enough to deter her. She had hundreds of ways to rescue her granddaughter easily. Why would she need to agree to the kidnappers? The challenger who married the granddaughter would stay in the flower yard for the rest of his life and would never be able to step out of the glittering jewel wonderland again. It was obvious at a glance whether the Heaven's Craftsman faction would choose to let a stranger like Suyu stay in the flower yard or one of their own. If you want to stay in the flower yard and be the yard master's grandson-in-law, you'll have to find someone else. I won't keep you company, Suyu said. With a flick of his fingers, he tore the fairy tying rope and released the youngest granddaughter. He smiled at her. Sorry for offending you just now. In the face of Suyu's betrayal, the eldest senior brother was not worried. Instead, he laughed. Haha, you do know some information, but it's a pity that you don't know everything. The fairy tying rope, seal. The eldest senior brother pointed from afar. All of a sudden, one end of the fairy binding rope, which had just been untied, entangled Suyu's palm, while the other end entangled the youngest granddaughter. They felt a burning pain in their palms. The immortal binding rope was burning, turning into a fiery red thread that wrapped around the two of them. Suyu's expression changed, and he tried to cut the red thread. After being burned, the red line transformed into nothingness and became transparent. Physical attacks could penetrate it, and it looked like it was made of air. However, Suyu could clearly feel that there was some kind of restraint on his palm, and the other end of it was connected to his youngest granddaughter. The eldest senior brother smiled. The red rope is ready. Congratulations, junior brother Su, for bringing home the beauty. The Heaven's Craftsman faction congratulates you in advance. Suyu was startled. What was going on with this fairy binding rope? The god-tying rope contains the red thread of mortal fate that the patriarch of the Heaven's Craftsman faction asked for from the great eastern continent. Back then, the trial-takers of the great Oriental family used this method to capture the granddaughter of a yard master and set foot on the transmitting formation. Once the red thread of mortal fate is drawn, external forces can't cut it off. You don't have to waste your energy. Just stay here and be the granddaughter of the yard master. The disciples of the Heaven's Craftsman faction breathed a long sigh of relief. It turned out that this was the truth behind the capture of the youngest granddaughter. It was to tie the red thread of mortal fate between Suyu and the youngest granddaughter to facilitate their marriage. Only then would the transmitting formation be reactivated. They wouldn't sacrifice their own people. The only one they could sacrifice was Suyu. What was the difference between being trapped in the garden of the glittering jewel wonderland forever and perishing? Suyu cast a deep look at the students of the Heaven's Craftsman faction and said leisurely, If I remember correctly, I was the one who saved your eldest senior brother's life. Is it really a good idea to set your sights on me every few days? Without Suyu, all the students of the Heaven's Craftsman faction would be in danger, not to mention the eldest senior brother. Even if Yu Liang came back, he might not be able to save them. It's said that the students of the Supreme Heavenly Demon faction are cunning by nature, but you, haha, you're so stupid. Yu Liang said dispassionately, shaking his head. Suyu was expressionless. He asked calmly, is that so? He was so confident and calm, which surprised eldest brother and Yu Liang. Junior brother Su, the path of training has always been a path of withered bones. Don't blame me for cutting off the rest of your life. If you want to blame something, blame it on the narrow path of training that only we can pass through. Resign yourself to your fate, the eldest senior brother sighed. With a tap of his toes, he floated in the void and looked around. Yard Master, please show yourself. I've fulfilled the requirements set by you and brought a good match for one of your granddaughters. Isn't it time to fulfill your promise and let us pass through the transmitting formation? However, the garden was silent. The floral spirits on the ground didn't say a word. The eldest senior brother repeated himself again. Still, only his voice echoed in the void. There was no response. What's going on? The people of the Heaven's Craftsman faction finally sensed that something was wrong. The eldest senior brother looked bewildered. Could that woman from the great Oriental family be lying? According to the rumor, they had specially prepared a red thread of fate to bring a grandson-in-law to the flower yard master. Why didn't the yard master show herself? Right at that moment, a leisurely voice drifted over. That little brat from the great Oriental family wasn't wrong. Bringing a grandson-in-law for me does allow us to use the transmitting formation once, but bringing a husband for me isn't included. The one who spoke was none other than the youngest granddaughter who was bound by the red thread of fate. She wasn't the granddaughter of the flower yard. She was the flower yard master, the daffodil king, the empress of all flowers. What? Everyone looked in the direction of the voice and stared at the youngest granddaughter, beside Suyu, dumbfounded. At that moment, the youngest granddaughter still had an innocent look on her face. There was a hint of anger on her pure and flawless face, which made her look even more adorable. The people of the Heaven's Craftsman faction were confused. The flower yard master was a living creature that had existed for tens of thousands of years. How could she be in such an innocent state? You guys are really abominable. The yard master pouted angrily. With a twist of her jade-like hand, she untied the red thread of fate that was bound around her wrist. The scene had confirmed her identity without a doubt. Only an all-creation's old monster could untie the red thread so easily. The eldest senior brother swallowed hard and said, Yard Master, the challengers of the Heaven's Craftsman faction pay our respects to the Yard Master. We've misunderstood and offended you. The adorable and sweet Yard Master placed her hands on her hips and said angrily, She's my granddaughter. She was pointing at the emerald green woman behind her. Chapter 997. Her? Everyone's mind was in a mess. It was one thing for a young and adorable girl to be a 10,000-year-old flower. The old woman was the granddaughter they wanted to capture. They were unable to accept the contrast. The people of the Heaven's Craftsman faction obviously had no time to waste in shock. The kidnapping plan had undoubtedly failed. More undoubtedly, they had successfully angered an all-creation's old monster Yard Master. Yard Master, I've heard of the wonderful legends of the Dongfang family's challengers. That's why I'm offering you a qualified son-in-law. I hope to matchmake the grass tribe and the human tribe into a great marriage. I'm sincere and I bear no ill will, the eldest senior brother hurriedly said with cupped fists. The yard owner revealed a pensive look on her face. She rested her chin on her fair palm and asked suspiciously, Really? The eldest senior brother smiled and said, Of course, he's a disciple of the Jiuzhou Continent's Supreme Heavenly Demon faction. His status is extraordinary, and he's also very powerful. An ordinary 8th grade almighty is no match for him. Plus, he's young, so he fits the requirements of the yard master's grandson-in-law. The young girl's eyes lit up, and she couldn't help but size Su-yu up. She then looked at the middle-aged woman behind her and asked, "Juror, what do you think?" The middle-aged woman examined Su-yu and nodded slightly. "It seems like his power isn't bad. He's young and outstanding." The disciples of the Heaven's Craftsman faction secretly heaved a sigh of relief. The crisis was likely to be resolved. Beloved concubine? Su-yu's whole body shuddered, but he still wore a calm look on his face. He wore a faint smile as he said, "I am outstanding, but I am still young. Haha, none of you have seen my true face, so how can you say that I am young?" The eldest senior brother chuckled. "Junior brother Su, are you trying to tell me that the age restriction of the Glittering Jewel Wonderland is fake? Those who could enter the Glittering Jewel Wonderland were all outstanding talents of the younger generation." Su-yu stroked the mask with his palm and smiled. "The restrictions are real, and it is also true that I am not a young man." The silver mask was gently taken off, revealing an aged face. Coupled with his snow-white hair, no matter how one looked at it, he looked like an old man who was getting old and had nothing to do with the word young. "Ah, with your looks, it's impossible. How did you get in?" Shine was extremely shocked. Once upon a time, she had thought that Su-yu was a top-notch disciple of the younger generation of the supreme heavenly demon faction, but the truth was so unexpected. Eldest senior brother's eyes flashed and he said, "Is there something wrong with your lifespan?" The green-skinned middle-aged woman was startled, and then she revealed a surprised and dissatisfied expression. Su-yu put on his mask again and said with a smile, "Yard master, it seems like I don't meet your requirements. However, haven't you noticed that there are 2 more suitable grandson-in-law than me here?" His gaze shifted back and forth between the eldest senior brother and Yu Liang. One of them has reached the peak of the 9th grade almighty realm, while the other has a body comparable to that of an all-creation's old monster. His strength is above mine, and he's young and handsome. Yard master, why don't you ask your granddaughter who you're more satisfied with?" Su-yu asked with a faint smile. Upon hearing this, the yard master's disappointed eyes shone with a shrewd light. Wasn't a candidate more outstanding than Su-yu right in front of him? At that moment, the people of the Heaven's Craftsman faction fell silent. The faces of the eldest senior brother and Yu Liang darkened as if they had been splashed with ink. Yu Liang was impatient and scolded, "Surnamed Su, you're despicable. How dare you trick us?" Su-yu crossed his arms in front of his chest, calmly saying, "Senior brother Yu, why do you say that? What an honor it is to become the yard master's grandson-in-law. I recommended you and the eldest senior brother out of respect for both of you. If it wasn't for the fact that I'm not up to the yard master's standards, I wouldn't have given up such a cushy job." Upon hearing this, the yard master smiled to her liking. It was rare for the middle-aged woman to smile kindly at Su-yu. Su-yu's words were very effective. "You're courting death." Yu Liang was anxious. Once he was chosen as the grandson-in-law, it meant that he would have to stay in the Glittering Jewel Wonderland forever. How was that any different from death? Su-yu's eyes turned cold. "Senior brother Yu, I don't understand. When my junior brother was chosen, you were in high spirits. But when it's your turn, you're declining in every possible way. Is it because the yard master has a plant body that you're unwilling to accept?" "Nonsense. Of course not. But how could he say that out loud?" The yard master and her granddaughter stared at Yu Liang with hostility in their eyes. The eldest senior brother's face darkened. He said hurriedly, "Yard master, please don't listen to this man's nonsense. We can't wait to show our respect." "It's just that." Before he could finish, Su-yu interrupted him. "Since you don't mind, then agree to become the yard master's grandson-in-law. I congratulate you in advance." "You." The smile on the eldest senior brother's face had disappeared, replaced by anger. Under such circumstances, he certainly couldn't smile. Yard master, please think twice. Don't listen to this man's nonsense. We respect you and have no intention of rejecting you. But we have important matters to attend to and can't stay in the yard. Please forgive us, yard master, the eldest senior brother said hurriedly. The yard master held her chin with her snow-white hands and said with her big, bright eyes, "You have your own matters to attend to. What does it have to do with me choosing my grandson-in-law? Since you've come to me, it means you're willing to become my grandson-in-law. Who do you fancy?" The middle-aged woman's eyes swept over the eldest senior brother and Yu Liang. She said delightedly, "Grandma, can I have 2 concubines at the same time? They both look great." Chi. The middle-aged woman licked her lips. Her tongue was emerald green and extremely terrifying. Upon hearing that, the eldest senior brother and Yu Liang's faces turned green. The yard master said, "Sure." Her eyes swept over and fell on the eldest senior brother and Yu Liang. She said, "Both of you, are you going to take off your clothes and go with Jur, or do you want the yard master to take the initiative?" At this moment, both of them were in a mess, and they were filled with grief and indignation. They were being forced into marriage. Well, they had to take off their clothes. The eldest senior brother's face was extremely ghastly. He had miscalculated. The original plan was to deceive a young talent and hand him over to the yard master. In this way, he could complete the mission issued by the yard master and find a son-in-law for her granddaughter. In the end, the B***-starred Su Yuxian had a trick up his sleeve, causing him to fail. In the end, not only did they fail to deceive Su Yu, but they also pushed themselves into a pit. "Senior brother, what should we do?" Yu Liang asked hurriedly, his face extremely ghastly. "I don't want to get married." The eldest senior brother's face flickered with uncertainty. After a while, he gritted his teeth. "There's no other way, we have to fight. Fortunately, I have a backup plan." How could he be unprepared when dealing with the yard master at the level of an all-creation's old monster? "Today, no one can stop us from passing through the formation and leaving." The eldest senior brother snorted softly. He retrieved a toad-like puppet and tossed it into the air. All of a sudden, the whole body of the toad emitted fluorescent light. In the light, it expanded crazily and reached 1,000 feet in the blink of an eye. An aura that would cause one's heart to tremble was spat out from within the giant toad. As soon as the toad appeared, the surrounding plant spirits shrieked in terror and fled in all directions as if they had encountered their natural enemy. Shayin was delighted. She said in surprise, "Senior brother, you have an all-creation's old monster puppet." The first one was smashed by the woman of the great Oriental family. She didn't expect senior brother to have a second one. "People of the Heavens Craftsman faction, heed my command. Change target, subdue the yard master and force her to activate the transportation formation," the eldest senior brother said decisively. They had no way out. The disaster of flowers was behind them, and the city was full of strong plant spirits in front of them. The only way out was to capture the ringleader first. Together with an all-creation's old monster puppet, they might be able to defeat the yard master. The yard master's face fell. "A human puppet? You want to subdue me? Take a rest." Boom. The yard master's snow-white palm suddenly slapped forward. Shadows of daffodil petals fell on the surface of the toad puppet's body. The all-creation's mighty force was earth-shattering, and the petals even contained an extreme power. Standing aside, the people of the Heavens Craftsman faction held their breaths and did not even dare to breathe. It was as if they were about to be crushed by the force. The absolute suppression of the level made them unable to muster any will to resist. Seeing that the toad puppet was about to be smashed by the all-creation's mighty force, at the critical moment, the toad puppet stomped on the ground with its hind legs. Its body flew forward like a flash of lightning, creating a huge crack in the void. The toad puppet's figure flashed and entered the crack. The daffodil petals fell and drifted to the area where the toad puppet had appeared. The area immediately turned into a sheet of cold ice. The aftermath of the cold air swept across the area where the people of the Heaven's Craftsman faction were. They hurriedly operated their vital chi, and did not dare to touch it with their bodies. That was because the cold air also contained a trace of all creation's mighty force. Apart from Yu Liang, anyone who touched it with their bodies would be destroyed in an instant. A fight between all creations was not something they could participate in. Creak! All of a sudden, a crack appeared in the space behind the yard master. A huge scarlet tongue stretched out like a flash of lightning. The long tongue contained the power of space. It almost teleported to the back of the yard master and coiled around her. The yard master snorted. Annoying! Her long sleeves were torn to shreds. Her snow-white arms emitted an emerald-green fluorescence. The human-shaped arms turned into two emerald-green leaves, sharp and long. The two leaves carried a mighty force. One of them sliced through the long scarlet tongue, while the other sliced through the opened crack in the space. A horrible shriek was heard. The long scarlet tongue was severed, and emerald-green blood splashed out from the crack in the space. The crack closed, and the toad puppet seemed to have been annihilated. Just as the yard master retracted her sharp leaf arms, a huge crack in the space suddenly appeared above her head without warning. A huge bloody mouth stretched out from the crack in the space, shrouding the yard master and spitting out a mouthful of white liquid. The liquid emitted an extremely potent poison, corroding the space and forming circles of black cracks. Su Yu's scalp went numb at the sight of such a terrible poison. Once touched by a poison of this degree, one would die before the Milky Way star sand could expel it from the body. The yard master curled her lips and snorted angrily. You've angered me. The virtual shadow of the daffodil floating above the yard master's head suddenly flew away and rotated 30 feet above her head. Drops of gentle liquid dripped from the daffodil, forming an arc-shaped curtain of rain that enveloped the yard master. The white, highly toxic liquid dripped down the curtain of rain. A sizzling sound was heard, but it was evaporated by the curtain of rain. Not a single drop fell on the yard master's body. Immediately after, the yard master glared at the yard master. Two roots stretched out from the soles of her feet, sliced through the space under her feet, and drilled into the void. The toad puppet was about to retract its head when it suddenly let out a horrible shriek. Tiny roots grew out of its body from the inside out. They were the tiny roots that had separated from the two roots after they entered the body of the toad puppet. There were tens of thousands of roots densely packed together. Even the hair of the puppet had grown roots. Su Yu glanced at it with his transparent eye, and his hair stood on end. There were no internal organs inside the toad's body. They were all filled up by the squirming roots. Bang! With a loud noise, the enormous number of roots broke the toad puppet from the inside out. The All Creations toad puppet was smashed by the yard master so easily. However, right at that moment a sudden change took place. The broken pieces of the toad suddenly danced wildly. One piece was connected to another, forming a long chain-like object. It sliced through the void abruptly and entangled the yard master. The yard master was caught off guard and was entangled by the chain. When she tried to resist, the chain tightened abruptly, confining her body and the All Creation's mighty force. The scene made the people of the Heaven's Craftsman faction overjoyed. It's worthy of being the #1 puppet that can transform. The eldest senior brother exclaimed in admiration. The puppet that was smashed by the woman of the great Oriental family was far less powerful than this one. The unexpected subduing of the yard master had resolved the crisis. Ah! I won't spare you. The yard master struggled with all her might, but she couldn't break free from the chain. The youngest granddaughter's face fell when she saw that. She yelled anxiously, "Let go of Grandma!" She dashed over immediately to rescue the bound yard master. The eldest senior brother sneered. "You're courting death." Swoosh! Another part of the broken pieces condensed into a new chain. With the all creation's mighty force, it bombarded the youngest granddaughter. Puff! An arrow of emerald green blood shot out from her mouth. Her body was smashed into pieces by the mighty force. Her entire body was torn apart. However, she wasn't human after all. She didn't die, but was severely injured. Whoever dares to come near, I'll kill them without mercy. The eldest senior brother reached out and the chain fell into his palm. With a twitch, a large area of the void shattered. The strong wood demons who came to rescue retreated in horror, none of them daring to come forward. I heard that if we capture the yard master, we'll get an additional sublimation at the last moment. I wonder if the rumor is true. The eldest senior brother walked over with a smile. He looked the yard master up and down excitedly. He didn't have any confidence in capturing the yard master. Every yard master was a living creature personally cultivated by the glittering jewel mortal fairy. They were different from ordinary living creatures, and it was highly possible that they possessed some unknown magical powers. For some unknown reason, the yard master of the garden had been captured before she could display her special abilities. It didn't seem to match the rumor. However, the rumor about capturing the yard master had been circulating for a long time. It was said that once the 5 yard masters were gathered, it was highly possible that the unknown 6th yard that had never appeared would be opened. That was the legendary 6th yard. It was said that it was the ultimate legacy left by the glittering jewel mortal fairy. Unfortunately, since the beginning of time, there were only a few who had survived the 5 natural disasters, let alone capturing the 5 yard masters. How could they even talk about opening the 6th yard? I can agree if you want to pass through the teleportation portal, but please don't hurt the living creatures in the garden, the yard master said as she gradually stopped struggling. The corners of the eldest senior brother's mouth curled up. Do you think that you still have bargaining chips? I heard that in the city of the garden, there's the honey of 100 flowers brewed by the Daffodil King for 10,000 years. It has the magical effect of refreshing the mind and improving one's perception. 1 drop can increase one's perception tenfold in a short time. For those who have bottlenecks in the comprehension of cultivation methods, it's no different from a divine elixir. Yard master, please hand it over one by one. You have 9 granddaughters. Hand over 100 drops and I'll let one go. If you can't, don't blame me for being merciless. A ferocious look appeared on the eldest senior brother's face. Chapter 998. Trial takers, there must be a reason for us fairy realm creatures to exist. Why do you have to kill us all? The yard master spoke in human language. Her tone was calm, and her expression was calm. She was filled with a noble temperament. She was the complete opposite of the ignorant young girl. The shadow of the daffodil floating above her head had disappeared at some point. Sensing the change in the yard master, everyone suddenly felt an inexplicable uneasiness, as if something would happen next. The eldest senior brother frowned slightly and said, "Survival of the fittest. You fairy realm creatures have caused many human tribe heroes to sleep here. Today is just a reincarnation. Each generation of human tribe experts is stronger than the last. Now it's your turn to decline." Throughout the ages, the continent had prospered, with each generation surpassing the last. The geniuses of Jojo in the past were incomparable to the heavens' favorites of Jojo today. If you say so, I can't do anything about it. But I'm warning you, let me go immediately while you still have 1 day. The disaster of flowers would arrive 1 day later. The terror of the disaster of flowers was enough to cause 20% of the trial takers to stay forever. I hate threats the most, the eldest senior brother said indifferently. The shard chain in his right hand twitched again. Suddenly, the shattered body of the youngest granddaughter turned into ashes under the chain. A ripple of a soul disappearing from the world surged in all directions. You have 8 more chances, the eldest senior brother said. He had subdued the yard master and held the all creation's weapon shard in his hand. No one in the city was a match for him. He could kill anyone with a single thought. The yard master's pupils shrank, and sorrow flashed across her eyes. Even though she had a long lifespan and was indifferent to the chaos of the world, she still couldn't get rid of the shackles of blood. "All right, I'll grant you all your wishes." The yard master's eyes were filled with indifference. Flowers of various colors suddenly began to bloom on the top of the yard master's head. The shadow kept changing, and it was overwhelming. "Oh my God, petals are falling from the sky." A petal suddenly fell on the tip of a girl's nose. She looked up subconsciously and screamed. Hearing that, the crowd raised their heads to look, and all of them were shocked. Petals of various colors were falling from the sky, radiating from the city of flowers to the outside of the city and the entire fairy realm. On a distant hill, a lovely and bright girl riding a flaming phoenix giggled with swirls at the corner of her mouth. "They have failed. The disaster of flowers has come early. I'd better look for the next target." Whoosh! The flaming phoenix let out a sharp screech, shattering the void with the sound waves, tearing through the void and leaving. All the challengers in the immortal realm noticed the flower petals falling from the sky. Most people were curious and confused. Only a few people knew that it was a disaster of flowers. Eldest senior brother was stunned. His expression changed drastically. Disaster of flowers? How could this be? The 5 great catastrophes occur once every 7 days, and this has never changed. Why would the disaster of the flowers be brought forward by a day? What? Is it the disaster of flowers? The disciples of the Heaven's Craftsman faction who learned the truth cried out in shock. "My nose!" Suddenly, the woman who discovered the petals at the tip of her nose screamed. Her nose suddenly went numb. Looking closely, her nose actually had wood veins. In the blink of an eye, her exquisite nose had turned into wood. Not only that, from the tip of her nose, the wood texture spread to her entire face. When she finished screaming, her entire face had turned into wood. Then the neck, the buttocks, the limbs. My body." The woman opened her mouth with great difficulty. It was difficult for her to complete a sentence, because her body had also begun to turn into wood. Creak! Before long, her whole body was fixed on the spot. Her snow-white skin turned coarse and dark gray. She was motionless like a tree stump. She no longer looked like a human. To be precise, she was no longer a human, but a wooden sculpture. "Ah! Senior brother, save me! I've also been touched by the petals." A male disciple screamed. Like the woman, the male disciple quickly turned into wood in a short time and became a wooden sculpture. The disaster of flowers was a shower of heavenly flowers. Once the challengers touched it, they would turn into wooden sculptures in a short time, their vitality and soul destroyed. No cultivation, even an all creation's old monster, could withstand the power of the disaster of flowers' wood transformation, because it was left behind by the glittering jewel mortal fairy. As the yard master, the Daffodil King had never shown his ability to control the disaster of flowers. In the other yards, the natural disasters were launched according to time, and the yard masters couldn't control them. Only the garden master could control the time and intensity of the natural disasters. "All of you, stay here," the garden master said indifferently. As soon as she finished speaking, the heavenly flowers grew denser and denser. All of a sudden, the JoJo geniuses of the glittering jewel wonderland were faced with a disaster. One by one, the all-powerful geniuses of the continent were turned into wooden sculptures amidst their indignant and angry roars, their souls destroyed. Those who were decisive and ruthless cut off the spots where the petals touched and barely escaped the disaster. Only a few top-notch experts fought against the disaster of flowers with their magical powers. The eldest senior brother's expression changed drastically, and he said angrily, "Stop now, or I'll kill you." The yard master said calmly, "Once the disaster of flowers begins, no one can stop it." She could start the disaster of flowers, but she couldn't stop it. No matter how much the people of the Heaven's Craftsman faction hated her, they couldn't continue to capture her other 8 granddaughters. Her action was actually to save them. Then activate the teleportation portal immediately. The eldest senior brother shouted sternly. The only way to minimize casualties was to use the teleportation portal to teleport to the area where the disaster of flowers was the weakest. However, the yard master still looked indifferent. I refuse. Then I'll kill you. The eldest senior brother's killing intent soared. Seeing the disciples of the Heavens Craftsman faction being turned into wooden sculptures with nowhere to hide, his eyes couldn't help but turn red. The yard master said placidly, I've lived for eternity, and my lifespan is endless. But what's the point of being trapped in the glittering jewel wonderland? Therefore, I sealed my consciousness and appeared in the world as a young girl. Killing me is just a way to free me. You'll just set me free. The garden won't perish because of my death. After my death, a new yard master will be born automatically. Her words were filled with desolation, indifference, and helplessness, which infected people's hearts. The eldest senior brother was infuriated. Both of his plans had failed. Fine, I'll grant you your wish. The eldest senior brother bellowed. The shackles that bound the yard master tightened abruptly, intending to strangle her to death. However, right at that moment, an unprecedentedly powerful wine-red ripple light erupted around the yard master. The ripple was full of space energy, which engulfed the yard master in an instant. Space transportation? The eldest senior brother's expression changed, and his eyes shot back abruptly. Beside Suyu, who no one cared about, the red light spread, and the figure of the yard master appeared. Suyu grasped the yard master's shoulder and said with a faint smile, Eldest senior brother, since the disaster of flowers can't be stopped, what's the point of killing one more person? The eldest senior brother's pupils constricted fiercely. Space talent? You have an ancient spiritual body with space attributes? There was only one explanation for being able to manipulate space energy without reaching the realm of all creations. An ancient spiritual body with space attributes. Suyu ignored him. Staring at the yard master, he said, Activate the transportation portal and leave with me. The yard master cast an indifferent glance at Suyu and withdrew her gaze expressionlessly. She didn't resist, as if she had accepted her fate. To her, dying in the hands of Suyu and the eldest senior brother made no difference. Don't waste your time. In her eyes, what's the difference between you and us? Yu Liang said with murderous intent as he dodged the falling pebbles and circled to Su Yu's back. The eldest senior brother berated, Su Yuxian, hand her over at once. Obviously, he didn't intend to kill the yard master. Capturing a yard master would give him the honey of 100 flowers and a chance to open the mysterious 6th yard. Did he have any reason to kill her? Just now, he was merely threatening her to activate the transportation portal. How could he really kill her? Su Yu ignored him and said leisurely, Yard Master, have you ever thought of leaving the flower yard and reaching the outside world one day? The yard master's eyes were dim, and a mocking smile appeared at the corners of her mouth. You are already the 10th challenger who has said something similar to me. It's useless. The living creatures of the glittering jewel wonderland are restricted by the rules of the wonderland. They can't leave. Su Yu said, Is that so? I've never thought that anything in this world could really bind people. She closed her eyes slightly. Deep in the sky, an invisible giant hand suddenly cut through the firmament. In the perception of the eldest senior brother and the others, it was as if an extremely powerful will had suddenly appeared between heaven and earth. However, in the eyes of the yard master, she clearly saw a majestic black-haired divine shadow flashing behind Su Yu. His hand cut through the firmament. The glittering jewel wonderland shook and tottered as if it was about to be broken. Pure divine decree, peak. The yard master's pupils dilated continuously. Her indifferent expression vanished without a trace, and her heart, which had been silent for ages, was thumping loudly. The peak of pure divine decree was the realm that the glittering jewel mortal fairy had reached in the past. She had stopped at this step, unable to take another step forward. Su Yu's pure divine decree had reached the level of the glittering jewel mortal fairy in the past, shaking the rules she had set up. What made her heart beat wildly was that she couldn't see through Su Yu's divine path at all. It seemed to be extremely destructive, but she didn't know what it was. Su Yu's divine decree could only be described in one word: defy. The peak pure divine decree could defy all restraint. The glittering jewel wonderland was a realm of its own, and it was a restraint to begin with. Unleashing the divine decree should be able to break this restraint. If there was a chance, he could break the rules of the glittering jewel mortal fairy and take the yard master away from the wonderland. Surprise flashed in Yu Liang's eyes, but he didn't realize what the change just now meant. Eldest senior brother, let's strike together and kill Su Yuxian first, then snatch the yard master back and leave this place quickly, Yu Liang said. The eldest senior brother yelled, Su Yuxian, you asked for it. In their opinion, the yard master would never agree to Su Yu's request to activate the transportation station. However, the moment they struck, an invisible silk thread flashed through Su Yu's sleeve. The shard chain trapping her was easily cut and broken. How is this possible? The eldest senior brother was shocked. Even a stage 2 all creation's old monster might not be able to break the restraint. How did Su Yu do it? I believe you've made your choice. Su Yu kept his hands in his sleeves, not the slightest bit afraid that the yard master would attack him. The yard master nodded slightly. Of course I know. She glanced at the eldest senior brother, Yu Liang, and the rest of the people of the Heaven's Craftsman faction who were charging at her. The all creation's mighty force was surging, and murderous aura surged in all directions with sweeping momentum. In an instant, the faces of the people of the Heaven's Craftsman faction darkened. They had killed her granddaughter with their own hands. Now that they were free, how could they let the matter rest? All of you must die. Once the yard master was free, her murderous aura surged. Without turning her head, she flicked her fingers behind her. All of a sudden, the all creation's mighty force broke through the void and swept in all directions. Everyone, get into formation! The eldest senior brother's heart was thumping wildly. He bellowed and took out a green puppet first. The puppet spun and stood in front of him. The rest of the people took out similar puppets one after another. When the all creation's mighty force swept across, all the puppets were shattered and turned into dust. Puff! The people of the Heaven's Craftsman faction, including the eldest senior brother and Yu Liang, were all sent flying while vomiting blood. Substitution puppet? The yard master's eyes revealed a hint of astonishment. This attack had instinctively killed all of them on the spot, leaving none alive. The Heaven's Craftsman faction had put in a lot of effort to help more of their disciples obtain sublimations. However, in the face of the absolute power of the all creation's old monsters, it could only delay their deaths. Eldest senior brother, we can't wait any longer. Hurry up and ask the Grandmaster for help. Yu Liang wiped the blood from the corners of his mouth and yelled anxiously. The eldest senior brother gritted his teeth. Now that the survival of the Heaven's Craftsman faction was at stake, they had no choice but to give it a try. We respectfully request the Supreme Heavenly Bull. The eldest senior brother took out a broken bronze bull and tossed it high into the sky. Waves of mighty, unparalleled power surged out from the inside of the bronze bull. The power caused the sky to tremble as if it was about to be torn apart by the force. Su Yu's pupils constricted fiercely. The mortal fairy's strength. The mysterious bronze bull was bursting with the mortal fairy's strength. Moreover, Su Yu's keen perception detected that a wisp of weak but very powerful consciousness was awakening inside the bronze bull. Let's go, Su Yu said hurriedly. He vaguely remembered that the Grandmaster who founded the Heaven's Craftsman faction wasn't a human, but a green bull. When the Heaven's Craftsman faction developed and became the overlord of the Heavenly Knife region, the green bull suddenly left, leaving behind a bronze bull imprinted with his image. Once activated, it could be summoned. This was something that happened 6,000 years ago. When he first read about it in the ancient books, he thought it was an absurd and bizarre legend. He didn't expect it to be true. The bronze bull gave Su Yu a sense of extreme danger. Without Su Yu's urging, the yard master also sensed the crisis. A daffodil appeared on the top of her head, and several crystal drops of liquid flew out and sprinkled on the stationary formation. All of a sudden, the seal was unlocked, and the formation was operating rapidly. The yard master grasped Su Yu's arm and teleported him to the transportation formation. The eldest senior brother was annoyed. Don't let them escape. Even the revered Lord Green Bull had used his last resort. If he still couldn't save everyone from the disaster of flowers, the Heaven's Craftsman faction would be doomed. Unfortunately, it was too late. The formation was activated very quickly. In the blink of an eye, Su Yu and the yard master were sucked into the space transportation. When the powerful consciousness inside the dilapidated bronze bull was fully awake, Su Yu and the yard master were nowhere to be seen. The eldest senior brother gritted his teeth in hatred. Su Yu Xian. Originally, everything was going smoothly. However, Su Yu Xian had caused all of his plans to fall through. In the end, he had persuaded the yard master by some unknown means and lured her away. As for the people of the Heaven's Craftsman faction, what awaited them was a disaster of flowers that would last for a whole day. When the disaster of flowers was over, no more than 5 of them would survive. Revered Lord Green Bull, please save us. The eldest senior brother clenched his fists and knelt on the ground. A soft green light was emitted from the dilapidated bronze bull, enveloping all the people of the Heaven's Craftsman faction. Surprisingly, the petals falling from the sky couldn't penetrate the green light. Seeing that, the people of the Heaven's Craftsman faction were overjoyed. Within a few breaths, 5 of them had perished in the disaster of flowers. Now, with the protection of the young man, they were safe from the disaster. However, they couldn't be happy for too long, because they had planned to use the revered Lord Green Bull during the second disaster to increase everyone's chances of getting sublimations. Now, they were using it to save their lives. Revered Lord Green Bull, please help us. After the joy, all the people of the Heaven's Craftsman faction were furious. Su Yu Xian had ruined their faction's great plan. The revered Lord Green Bull could only use it once. Since he had used it, he would destroy Su Yu Xian as well. Who is he? An ethereal voice slowly sounded out from within the bronze bull's body. The people of the Heaven's Craftsman faction knelt on the ground as if they were gods. Revered Lord, he claims to be a disciple of the Supreme Heavenly Demon faction, Su Yu Xian. Su Yu Xian of the Supreme Heavenly Demon faction, I got it. The dilapidated bronze bull's whole body was filled with green light. Su Yu, who was in the middle of the transportation, shuddered violently. Somehow, a great crisis seemed to envelop him. This feeling was very similar to when he was besieged by the 5 golden light guards. Chapter 999. The disaster of flowers had not yet fully begun, but they had already encountered an inexplicable crisis. The people of the Heaven's Craftsman faction must have used some means, Su Yu thought to himself. Judging from the behavior and conduct of the Heaven's Craftsman faction students, Su Yu found it hard to believe that the Heaven's Craftsman faction still had any lingering feelings for the blessed and heavenly lands. It was just that the blessed and heavenly lands had not yet declined to a certain extent, which made them wary. The reconciliation between the two sides was only superficial. Having experienced great storms, crises were now a common occurrence for Su Yu. It was worth paying attention to, but not all. Swoosh. As he pondered, Su Yu felt a sense of stability on his feet after a moment of dizziness. He opened his eyes and looked around, only to find himself in the middle of a forest. Strange trees with dark trunks and crimson leaves clustered together to form a boundless forest. Looking at the forest, Su Yu was shocked to find that every tree had a book of different colors. Leaping lightly, Su Yu flew to the nearest tree and reached out to grab a book. He thought it was a book hanging on the tree, but when he touched it, he found that the book was growing on the branch. Flipping open the book, lines of words appeared before his eyes. Huang Ze, male, 23 years old, entered the path at 10, stepped into the fairy at 13, stepped into the Almighty at 16, and reached the later stage of the Almighty at 20. Cultivated the roar of the Thunder Lion. Apprenticed to the Heavenly Knife region. Died in 1730 AD of Jiuzhou. His life is as follows. The following introduction was magnificent. From Huang Ze's perspective, he described every little detail of his life. Even the hemorrhoids on his buttocks were recorded in detail. As he read, Su Yu had a strange feeling in his heart, and he was not used to it. It felt like he was reading about himself. Su Yu flipped left and right until the end. 1730 AD died in the hands of Mo Tianxian of the Red Blood Palace while fighting for the Starry Sky Genius, Mo Jidao's Book of Life. When he read the last paragraph, Su Yu could not help but be surprised to find written records about Mo Tianxian here. It was 1730 AD, which was almost exactly 300 years ago. Mo Tianxian happened to be an influential figure of the generation 300 years ago. At that time, she had also participated in the Glittering Jewel Wonderland and killed a disciple of the Heavens Craftsman faction named Huang Ze. The reason was that they were fighting over a book of life called Mo Jidao. What is the Book of Life? Su Yu asked the flower yard master, who was standing under the tree. She, who had also been teleported over, appeared to be extremely quiet. She waited under the tree and did not approach, as if she had some sort of resistance towards the tree. A tinge of melancholy appeared in the yard master's indifferent eyes. "Isn't the Book of Life in your hand?" Su Yu put down the book subconsciously. The book fell to the ground and burned in the air. The pitch-black tree also started to burn. In an instant, the book and the tree turned into a cloud of pitch-black dust. The dust did not seem like ashes, but more like bone powder that had been eroded by the wind. Those who die in the book garden, after they die, their bodies will turn into dark, giant trees, and their souls will turn into a book. The book contains the life experiences of the deceased. Just now, you should have seen the life history of a deceased person. Hearing this, Su Yu felt relieved. No wonder the narrative angle in the book was so strange. Su Yu sighed silently as he gazed at the bone dust under his feet. A late-stage Almighty in his 20s was considered a rare talent in the world. Now that he was buried in the Glittering Jewel Wonderland and his life was publicly displayed, how sad was that? Su Yu rolled up his sleeves and shot out a mass of vital energy. He dug a small pit and buried the remaining bone dust in it. Seeing this, the yard master said, "Take care of yourself, don't die here." Su Yu nodded. He did not want his life to be hung on a tree for outsiders to watch, no matter how big or small. "Yard master, are you familiar with the book garden? Can you give me some hints?" Su Yu looked over and asked. He had rescued the yard master, firstly out of sympathy, and secondly, he hoped to get the yard master's help, such as her familiarity with the Glittering Jewel Wonderland. "The book garden is not dangerous compared to the flower garden," the yard master said briefly. "As long as you are wary of the disaster of books and the challengers, you will be safe." Su Yu was speechless. She might as well not say anything at all. As if she knew what Su Yu was thinking, the yard master said, "I have never left the flower garden for half a step in my life. What I know is from the oral accounts of the challengers who have passed by. That's what they said." Suddenly, the yard master added, "Oh, I remember now. They also said that the deeper you go into the book garden, the more dangerous it gets, because the closer you are to the depths of the book garden, the stronger the trees were when they were alive." Su Yu's eyes flickered as he swept his gaze over the densely packed forest. Not only had Su Yu seen Huang Ze's life history from his Book of Life, but he had also clearly seen his cultivation methods. The roar of the Thunder Lion that Huang Ze had cultivated not only recorded the training method, but also the entire process of his training, even the thoughts he had comprehended, were recorded in detail. If the future generations were to refer to his book of life, they would be able to master all of his techniques in a short time. Anyone would be tempted. It could be said that this was almost a fateful encounter. Many of the strong men who had fallen in the past were the proud geniuses of the continent. How shocking were the techniques they had cultivated! In an instant, Suyu was also tempted. However, he didn't know how many experts were in the book garden now, and the danger of the central area was uncertain. Right, I remember now. They also said that the height of the trees can determine the distance from the central area. 100 feet of trees is the outermost area, 200 feet is the middle area, 300 feet is the inner area, and more than 400 feet is the central area. Suyu looked at the trees that were 1,000 feet tall in front of him, and the blue veins on his forehead bulged. Is there anything else that you haven't remembered? He had been transported to the central area of the central area. No wonder he was a genius who had reached the level of a late-stage almighty at the age of 20 just by flipping through a random book. The yard master's pretty face was flushed. She said, "Ahem, I remember again. It's different from the book garden. After entering the book garden, if you don't open any book, the disaster of books won't affect you at all. The disaster of books only targets challengers who have read the books." At this moment, Suyu only had one thing to say, 6 words. Why didn't you say so earlier? It was too late to say anything now. The disaster of flowers wasn't over yet, but the disaster of books was right around the corner. Ahem, this place belongs to the book garden. As the flower yard master, I can't stay here for long. Do you have any way to shelter me? The flower yard master asked. She wholeheartedly wanted to follow Suyu and leave the glittering jewel wonderland. At this moment, even if Suyu drove her away, she might not be willing to leave. Suyu asked, "Can an ordinary storage space be used?" Upon hearing that, the yard master glared at him. What do you think? A storage space couldn't accommodate living things because of the lack of life element. Even an all-creation's old monster couldn't survive for too long. Suyu pondered seriously for a moment. There was only one space suitable for the yard master. Fine, I happen to have some things that need to be arranged, Suyu said. He looked around and saw a sunken basin in the distance. Then, he went there in a flash. The basin was surrounded by giant trees, and the shade of the trees was dense. Looking from above, it was difficult to see the bottom of the basin. This place was located in the center of the book garden. Naturally, it was a dangerous area, but it was also a relatively safe area for hiding. Hiding at the bottom, Suyu's arm flashed, and a mass of suspended spiritual light appeared. Gazing at the yard master meaningfully, Suyu said, "I hope you won't get too excited, and I hope you won't do anything out of line." The yard master's eyes flickered slightly, and she said in surprise, "A treasure that can create a space of its own?" This was made by the mortal fairy. Creating a space was the unique ability of a mortal fairy. Filled with curiosity, the yard master's whole body glowed with fluorescent light. She turned into a daffodil, integrated into the brilliant emerald light, and entered the 9-jade spiritual pearl. The moment she entered, the yard master exclaimed in surprise, "This isn't right! What a rich spiritual energy of the world! Ordinary mortal fairies can't create such a space." When her gaze landed on a golden nursery beside the yard, she was startled at first. Then, as if she had thought of something, she took a few steps closer. Her face changed drastically, and her whole body trembled. Supreme growing soil. No, it can't be. How could there be so many of them? Supreme growing soil is hard to find in the world, but there's a whole nursery here? Am I dreaming? After being stunned for a while, the yard master had an impulse to pounce on it and transplant herself into it. Supreme growing soil had incredible effects on the growth of plant. Even as the yard master, she couldn't resist the temptation. However, Suyu's warning appeared in her mind. She forced herself to hold it in. Biting her lip, she said with a ruddy face, Can you let me cultivate in it for a few days and have a taste of the supreme growing soil? She had taken the initiative to plead with the challenger. As one of the 5-yard masters of the glittering jewel wonderland, her status was undoubtedly as transcendent as that of the examiners to the challengers. To plead with the challenger, she had to lower her pride. Moreover, in her opinion, even if she begged, the other party might not agree. Supreme growing soil was a holy object that all plant creatures yearned for. It was impossible for the challenger not to understand the reason. However, just as she was feeling perturbed, Su Yu said, "As you wish." After years of observation and practice, the spirituality of the supreme growing soil wouldn't weaken just because it had been cultivated with plants. Su Yu was very sure of that. It was just sitting there. If the yard master wanted to use it, so be it. As for whether he was worried about the yard master revealing the existence of the supreme growing soil, since Su Yu had let her in, he must have made preparations. Su Yu was confident that he could erase her memory or keep her here forever. Really? The yard master was moved. Su Yu did not speak. He came before the nursery, took out a handful of crystal-colored seeds, and buried them in the supreme growing soil. These were the seeds of the grass of crystallization taken from the body of the eldest senior brother of the Heavens Craftsman faction. They originated from the mysterious Great Oriental family. Once they came into contact with blood, they would explode madly and crystallize. When used in times of need, they would have unexpected uses. Although there were only hundreds of seeds, with the cultivation speed of the supreme growing soil and the short lifespan of the grass of crystallization, thousands of seeds of the grass of crystallization could be obtained in a short period of time. If given more time, tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of seeds would not be a problem. Looking at Su Yu's back, the yard master could not hide her excitement. There's no such thing as a free lunch in this world. I don't have anything valuable on me, except for my honey of 100 flowers. The yard master's entire body was glowing. From the center of the stamen, 3 drops of orange-yellow liquid dripped, giving off a strong fragrance. After taking a light sniff, her mind was suddenly clear and she felt extremely comfortable. This is the essence of my original life. For living creatures, it has the ability to awaken spiritual intelligence and enhance perception. 3 drops is the limit that I can take out. Consider it as compensation for borrowing the supreme growing soil. Su Yu did not stand on ceremony. With a roll of his big sleeves, the 3 drops of liquid landed in his palm. His eyes were filled with joy. The essence of plants and trees were all treasures. Enmu's meditation under the tree and the fountain of life were both rare treasures in the world. The honey of 100 flowers before him must also be a rare treasure. "All right, help yourself," Su Yu said. Ignoring the yard master, his figure flashed and appeared near Xinggu. She was holding a golden leaf in her hand, training quietly with her eyes closed. What was surprising was that she was only a 3rd-grade fairy the last time, but now, her cultivation had reached the level of a 9th-grade almighty. The difference in cultivation before and after was like heaven and earth. Even Su Yu was taken aback. Even if she could continuously absorb energy to improve her cultivation without any hindrance, had she not even passed the ordeal of the Almighty? Swoosh! Xinggu opened her eyes. A pair of gray gleams flashed in the depths of her pupils, emitting a corrosive energy. "Sir!" Xinggu stood up. Even though her cultivation had improved tremendously, her reverence had not changed. She returned the golden leaf with both hands. Su Yu retrieved the leaf. With a cursory glance, he found that the mortal fairy's strength within had been refined by 20%. Just 20% was enough to make a 9th-grade almighty. The strength of the mortal fairy's strength was far beyond imagination. "The progress of your cultivation is far beyond my imagination," Su Yu exclaimed. He had thought that she might be of some use when she reached the 9th-grade fairy level, but to his surprise, she had reached the level of a 9th-grade almighty. Even Su Yu had to use some tricks to suppress her. Xing Ji's beautiful eyes were filled with elation. It's all thanks to the master's grace. She had never thought that she would reach such a terrifying level one day. A 9th grade almighty, only one step away from becoming a ghost general. It's because of your unique constitution that you can accommodate such enormous energy and the fact that you didn't have to face the ordeal of the ordeal, Su Yu said, shaking his head slightly. Xinggu frowned. Eh? Didn't Master resolve the ordeal for me? Where did that come from? Su Yu asked curiously. Xinggu said, when I broke through to the fairy level, I encountered the ordeal. Therefore, I don't have a unique constitution that is immune to the ordeal. A few days ago, when I broke through to the Almighty, I clearly felt that the ordeal was coming, but it disappeared inexplicably. Didn't Master resolve the ordeal of the Almighty? The ordeal couldn't descend in space, it would only appear in the outside world. The only reason she could think of was that Su Yu had resolved it. Su Yu had a thoughtful look on his face. He said, when you're done with your training, come out with me. With a flash of azure light, Su Yu's soul returned to his body. At the same time, Xinggu left the 9 jade spiritual pearl and arrived in the outside world. Stand guard for me, Su Yu said, immediately sitting down with his legs crossed. Xinggu nodded obediently. Her bright eyes shone brightly as she surveyed her surroundings vigilantly. She didn't have the slightest intention of being reborn and running away. After such a long period of contact, looking back on the past, she only felt that she had been muddle-headed in the past. If she had to describe it, she could only say that she was clueless about being in a treasure trove of gold and silver. She didn't rely on Su Yu, a nature-defying genius who had so much potential and so many precious treasures. Instead, she tried to betray him several times. How could she be described as someone who had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai? She had easily trained to the 9th grade Almighty. This was something that outsiders couldn't even imagine in the past. Now, even if she had to be banished, she would beg Su Yu to stay. At that moment, Su Yu had already communicated with Yun Yazi. Master, what's going on? One of my imprints broke through to the Almighty but didn't go through the ordeal. Such a huge thing has happened, and yet I'm completely unaware. Could it be that Master has intervened and erased the ordeal? That was the only thing Su Yu could think of. A strand of hair on the top of Su Yu's head swayed slightly. It transformed into a figure that appeared beside Su Yu, staring at Xinggu. Xinggu didn't notice it at all. She merely glanced in the direction beside Su Yu in surprise. Yun Yazi observed for a moment, his expression turning serious. It wasn't me who intervened. The reason lies with you. Su Yu was shocked. Disciple? But I don't even have confidence in my own ordeal of the Almighty. How could I help her resolve it? Chapter 1000. Hearing that, Su Yu said, Master, please explain. Yun Yazi said, there are strong and weak ordeals. Your 39 ordeals were too powerful, causing the little devil's ordeal to dissipate on its own. It was not that someone had resolved Xinggu's ordeal, but that it had dissipated on its own. Master, will this affect me? Su Yu had a bad feeling about this. There was a price to pay for Xinggu's ordeal dissipating. Of course. Her ordeal dissipated because of you. When you go through your ordeal in the future, it will fall on you as well. Yun Yazi looked at Su Yu, his brows deeply creased. Whether Su Yu could pass the 39 ordeals was already uncertain. Now that he was dealing with someone else's ordeal, the future was even more uncertain. Su Yu was speechless. He could not even protect himself, yet he was unknowingly dealing with someone else's ordeal. From now on, you must stay away from anyone who goes through ordeals. Otherwise, the ordeals of others will fall on you, Yun Yazi warned. Su Yu agreed. However, with so many dangers looming, Su Yu was able to remain calm. Master, I will deal with the 39 ordeals with all my heart. Now, please help me modify the wooden bird. If the heavenly tribulation descended, the modified wooden bird might be of some help. Yun Yazi took the wooden bird and said, "All right, I will need about 7 days to refine it. This treasure requires a lot of mental energy from me, so I may not have the time to take care of you. Be careful in these 7 days." With that, Yun Yazi turned into a strand of hair, twining around the wooden bird and disappearing above Su Yu's head. "Yes, master," Su Yu said. His eyes flashed, and he took out 3 drops of orange-yellow liquid, the honey of 100 flowers, the essence of the garden master's life. Each drop could increase one's comprehension by nearly 10 times. To Su Yu, this item was like a timely rain, coming just in time. Just as Su Yu was about to study the method to consume the honey of 100 flowers, his face suddenly flashed with a hint of vigilance. He immediately flew up to a towering tree, holding his breath as he looked below. His transparent eyes pierced through the vegetation and rocks, seeing the situation hundreds of miles away. In the dense forest, several shadows streaked through the forest. There were about 2 groups of people. The first group was dressed in purple robes, their bodies emitting a faint purple vital energy. They were the challengers of the Purple Cloud Palace. As for the latter, their clothing was a mixture of different origins. At this moment, the latter was pursuing the former ferociously. Cultivators of the Purple Cloud Palace were constantly being killed. The difference in strength between the 2 sides was huge, forming a one-sided massacre. Purple Cloud Palace? Su Yu observed calmly. He wasn't someone who liked to meddle in other people's business. The Purple Cloud Palace had nothing to do with him, so there was really no need for him to save them hastily. Moreover, with the precedent of the Heaven's Craftsman faction, Su Yu was even more cautious. However, when his gaze swept over the cultivators of the Purple Cloud Palace, who were fleeing, his eyes were attracted by a beautiful figure in a jade-green gown. His breathing stopped. Lu Chuyi. Among the fleeing experts of the Purple Cloud Palace, there was a green leaf-like color on their purple robes. She had a tranquil and natural face, gentle and dignified. Even though she was fleeing for her life, it was difficult to conceal her elegant and calm temperament. At this moment, there were many bloody scars on her body. A faint light gathered in her pretty eyes. She gathered her genuine chi and led the cultivators of the Purple Cloud Palace to flee in the forest. "Senior Sister Lu, it's too late. We can't reach the area where Senior Brother Gu is," a thin male disciple with a sharp chin said. Lu Chuyi didn't look back. She was determined on the direction. "Don't look back. No one can save us except Senior Brother Gu." In the hearts of her and the strong men of the Purple Cloud Palace, Gu Taishu was their only and strongest support. This was a belief that came from the bottom of their hearts, and Lu Chuyi was no exception. The man with a sharp chin hesitated for a moment and said, "Junior Sister Lu, maybe Senior Brother Gu doesn't want us to rush there. We'd better think of another way." Hearing this, Lu Chuyi's eyes flashed with a trace of sadness. The challengers of the Purple Cloud Palace were all gathered in one place, but one person was absent. Gu Taishu. He could clearly sense their direction, but he was gradually moving further away, running in the opposite direction from them. There were rumors among the challengers who had encountered Gu Taishu that he was with the chief disciple of the heavenly demon faction, Zhong Shenxiu. Zhong Shenxiu was the most dazzling starry sky genius in the extreme north and one of the 4 great starry sky geniuses of Jiuzhou. Her brilliance overshadowed the heaven rulers of the continent. Gu Taishu, the #1 heaven ruler of the blessed and heavenly lands, was like a firefly in front of her. There was no comparison between the two. Moreover, Zhong Shenxiu was known as the #1 beauty of the demon faction and was known as the fairy demoness. A few years ago, the supreme heavenly demon faction had sent out invitations to all the heroes in the world to find a good spouse for Zhong Shenxiu. Gu Taishu had participated. Now that he had entered the glittering jewel wonderland, he had abandoned the disciples of the Purple Cloud Palace and met up with Zhong Shenxiu thousands of miles away. The meaning behind this was thought-provoking. The feelings of the disciples of the Purple Cloud Palace could be imagined. The one who was the most upset was Lu Chui. This was because Lu Chui was Gu Taishu's fiancée. Although it was not uncommon for a strong man to marry several beauties in the Jojo continent, it was not a good feeling for a talented girl like Lu Chui. Don't talk nonsense. Brother Taishu is not what you think. Lu Chui turned around and glared at the sharp-chinned man. Her eyes were sharp, and the latter was so frightened that he shut his mouth. Lu Chui hid the strange expression on her face and said seriously, "Don't be discouraged. According to my senses, we should be less than half a day's journey from Brother Taishu. As long as we persist in meeting him, with Brother Taishu's power, the Heavenly Knife region will collapse." They had encountered a strong enemy in the Book Garden, the Heavenly Knife region. Moreover, it was a gathering of many genius strong men of the Heavenly Knife region. The disciples of the Purple Cloud Palace were accidentally transported to the deepest part of the Book Garden and took the initiative to pluck the most precious book of life. This book was closely related. It was a divine book that the palace master of the Purple Cloud Palace had specifically asked them to bring back. There were tens of millions of books of life in the Book Garden, but none of them could be compared to this book. Even for the Purple Cloud Palace, the value of all the books in the Book Garden was less than this book. Therefore, this was a book of life that recorded the life of the former Starry Sky genius of the continent, Mo Dao. Throughout the ages, he was the first divine path genius to reach the peak of the pure divine decree and touch the void transformation divine decree. He had been a legend all his life. He was born without limbs, blind, deaf, and mute. He was almost a cripple. However, his comprehension was superb and could be called a miracle. With his only 5 senses and touch, he comprehended the divine path of heaven and earth. At the age of 100, he touched the threshold of the void transformation divine decree. With the amazing creation of the divine path, he defeated all the strong men of the world and became the leader of the Starry Sky geniuses. Even the 9 great prefectures' kings at that time had to be in awe of this mortal man. Unfortunately, he was a mortal after all. 100 years was the end of his life. After participating in the glittering jewel wonderland, he passed away. For thousands of years, everyone had been looking for Mo Dao's remains. The garden, the Book Garden, the Martial Garden, the Beast Garden, and the cemetery had been searched everywhere. It was not until 100 years ago that Mo Tianxian and the others found a clue. Mo Dao might have passed away in the Book Garden. Throughout the ages, he was the first Starry Sky genius to reach the peak of the pure divine decree. Even the 9 prefectures' kings could learn from his path on the path of the divine Tao. It also had an extraordinary impact on the all creation's strong men. For Lu Chui, this book was left for Gu Taishu, the genius who had also comprehended the pure divine decree to its peak. Throughout the ages, there was only one other person besides Mo Dao. The significance of this book to Gu Taishu was evident. Lu Chui was eager to personally deliver this book to Gu Taishu. Her wish was very, very urgent. Now, she would rather sacrifice herself than let the most magnificent man in her heart have no fate with this book. However, the situation was very critical. The Heavenly Knife region had accomplished everything in one go. Even the number 1 heaven ruler of the Heavenly Knife region, Bai Lingtian, was in pursuit. This was why the Purple Cloud Palace had been retreating in defeat and suffered a one-sided massacre. If it was an ordinary strong man, Lu Chui could rely on her cultivation to fight a 9th-grade almighty. She would not be afraid of the heaven ruler of the Heavenly Knife region. However, among the 9th-grade almighty of the Heavenly Knife region, there was a transcendent existence. The ancient spiritual body by Lingtian. It was rumored that he had never been defeated in the Heavenly Knife region. He had even fought with the Heavenly Knife region master and could last 10 moves without being at a disadvantage. There was only one person in the blessed and heavenly lands who could compete with such amazing combat power. Gu Taishu, such an absolutely crushing invincible strong man, had caused the Purple Cloud Palace to flee in large numbers. To be precise, it was thanks to Bai Lingtian that they were able to escape. The book that Mo Jidao had transformed into was the only divine book that had condensed 2 books of life. Both books recorded Mo Jidao's lifetime comprehension of the divine path. They were divided into the Book of Yang and the Book of Yin, each recording Mo Jidao's 2 completely different divine paths. Lu Chui had only picked the Book of Yang, but Bai Lingtian had taken the Book of Yin. He had stayed to comprehend the Book of Yin on the spot, giving Lu Chui and the others the opportunity to escape. Otherwise, if Bai Lingtian had attacked, none of them would have been able to walk out of the core area. Even so, they still suffered heavy casualties. Although Bai Lingtian had not attacked, the number 2 heaven ruler of the Heavenly Knife region, Qian Feng, had led a team to hunt them down. Qian Feng's combat power was equally terrifying. It was rumored that apart from Bai Lingtian, he had almost never been defeated in the Heavenly Knife region. There was also a rumor that Qian Feng's power was actually comparable to Gu Taishu's. Not to mention that, apart from the vanguard, there were several 8th-grade almighty top-notch heaven rulers, each stronger and more terrifying than the last. If the Purple Cloud Palace joined forces with the Red Blood Palace, they might be able to contend with the heaven rulers of the Heavenly Knife region. It would be difficult to rely on the Purple Cloud Palace alone. Lu Chui, do you think you can escape? Qian Feng had short silver hair and a pair of peach blossom eyes. His face was rosy, and his gaze was fixed on Lu Chui's beautiful figure in the distance. Wisps of strange light rippled in his eyes. Sizzle! He took out a white jade shield, which emitted a spiritual pressure that pierced through the clouds. As soon as it appeared, the spiritual energy in the surroundings became turbulent and frantically gathered in the shield. Prison of heaven and earth! He raised his hand and tossed the shield up into the sky, disappearing into the clouds. A large amount of fluorescent light sprayed out from the shield, and wisps of it fell down densely, covering a radius of 10,000 miles. Lu Chui's eyes narrowed and she said, "Be careful, it's a fairy artifact fragment. Perform the escape technique immediately, at all costs." As soon as she finished speaking, Lu Chui pointed a finger at her abdomen. The vital energy in her body flowed in reverse, and her whole body erupted with a sonic airflow. Her whole body almost pierced through the void, moving a large distance forward. Another 4 or 5 8th-grade Almighty also used their techniques to escape from the light. The rest of the people from the Purple Cloud Palace were all trapped. Qian Feng didn't look disappointed, or rather, it was exactly what he wanted. Don't worry about the challengers in the prison for now. Let's subdue Lu Chui and take the Book of Yang first. Qian Feng's gaze was still fixed on Lu Chui's beautiful figure, and he didn't look away. Wisps of anticipation ignited in the depths of his eyes. Yes. Behind him, 10 8th-grade Almighty, more than 27th-grade Almighty, and more than 56th-grade Almighty formed a semicircle, gradually closing in on Lu Chui and the others. Lu Chui yelled, "Use the secret technique and escape at all costs." Swoosh! Several residual shadows pierced through the void. Lu Chui and the others identified Gu Taishu's direction and ran for their lives. Qian Feng stood still, a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. Continue to chase. Although the secret technique is miraculous, the burden on the body is far beyond imagination. We just need to lock on to the target and not lose him. 6 hours passed. After using the secret technique, Lu Chui and the others had escaped to many regions. The surrounding trees were very short, almost 100 feet tall. They had already reached the outermost area of the book garden. It wouldn't be long before they could meet up with Gu Taishu. However, using the secret technique continuously consumed a lot of their energy. Most of their vital energy had been used up, and their physical strength was exhausted. Lu Chui's body was drenched in sweat. Her chest was wet, and it clung tightly to her round and plump breast. She was panting softly through her red lips. She was exhausted. Her eyes were full of solemnity, because she hadn't succeeded in escaping from the other party's pursuit, even after using all her skills. Creak! Suddenly, several cracks appeared in the space. Lu Chuyi's pupils shrank slightly as the space silently split open, and several vortexes appeared. A large number of experts stepped out of the vortexes. The leader was the silver-haired Qianfeng, who had a faint smile on his face. Lu Chuyi was shocked. Space talent? No. It's some kind of space magic. Who opened the space for them? Was there an all-creation expert? The rules of the glittering jewel wonderland existed, and no all-creation expert was allowed to enter. The only explanation was that an expert had used space magic for them. The time is right. Capture them. Qianfeng smiled confidently as he stared at Lu Chuyi. His eyes lingered on her alluring body. A dozen 8th grade Almighty, more than 27th grade Almighty, and a large number of 6th grade Almighty quickly formed a circle, surrounding the exhausted Lu Chuyi and the others. Even if they didn't surround them, they had no way to escape. The person who decided their fate was not themselves, but Qianfeng. Lu Chuyi, hand over the Book of Yang, seal your fetal crystal, and follow me. If you do so, I'll let your people go. Otherwise, I'll kill them first, Qianfeng said, staring at Lu Chuyi. The fetal crystal was a part similar to the fairy's dantian. Once it was sealed, the vital energy would be blocked, and the person would be like a mortal. Qianfeng also asked Lu Chuyi to follow him. His meaning was obvious. He wanted Lu Chuyi. Don't even think about getting the book or the person. Lu Chuyi's heart tightened. She held the Book of Yang in her hand, and her remaining vital energy surrounded it. Once she exerted force, she could destroy the Book of Yang and kill herself. Qianfeng said calmly, "Is that so? I don't believe that you will destroy the Book of Yang. Don't you want to leave this book for Gu Taishu? What if he misses out on a great opportunity?" Hearing this, Lu Chuyi clenched her fists, as if her weakness had been poked. Indeed, she wouldn't destroy the book, just for Gu Taishu. You can read this book and memorize its content. As long as you satisfy me, you can tell Gu Taishu about it later. Qianfeng crossed his arms and stared at Lu Chuyi confidently, as if he had her in his grasp. Lu Chuyi, the #1 genius of the blessed and heavenly lands. Such a woman is worthy of me, Qianfeng. Qianfeng's eyes became more and more passionate, almost unscrupulous. Aren't you in love with Gu Taishu? I'll give you a chance now. As long as you satisfy me and let me tame you, I'll let you bring the contents of the Book of Yang to him. Otherwise, Gu Taishu will lose the chance to obtain it. Chapter 1001. Everyone was waiting for Lu Chuyi's reply. In other words, everyone already knew Lu Chuyi's choice. They just wanted to give her time to say it. Everyone in the 9 prefectures knew that she was in love with Gu Taishu. Giving herself to Qianfeng in exchange for Gu Taishu obtaining the Book of Yang was an inevitable choice that Lu Chuyi would make. Purple Cloud Palace, perhaps you should try to persuade her. For the sake of Gu Taishu's future, and for the sake of your lives, it's better for her to make a decision as soon as possible. My patience is limited, Qianfeng said confidently as he scrutinized the members of the Purple Cloud Palace. The people of the Purple Cloud Palace looked at each other and fell silent. Persuading their beautiful senior apprentice sister to lower her head and allow others to do as they pleased made their hearts ache. But if they didn't do this, none of them would be able to escape the fate of death. They knew what to choose between the two. However, due to Gu Taishu's reputation, they were worried that he would vent his anger on them if he found out. Hence, it was not convenient for them to persuade him. But the silence of the people of the Purple Cloud Palace was also a form of oppression. Without support, it was equivalent to isolation. Finally, after a long moment of silence, the strange expression on Lu Chuyi's face disappeared. It was replaced by calmness as she stared at Qianfeng. She had to make a choice, the only choice. The corners of Qian Feng's mouth curled up as he stared at Lu Qi. It was as if he had already subdued this talented, beautiful, and virtuous woman. I refuse. Only when this cold and firm refusal entered his ears did the arc on the corners of Qian Feng's mouth stiffen. Hearing the unexpected answer, the expressions of the people of the Purple Cloud Palace also changed, and they became nervous and uneasy. It was rumored that Lu Qi, who was loyal to Gu Taishu, would make such a choice. After a long while, the smile on Qian Feng's face disappeared, and a cold look covered his face. Is this your affection for Gu Taishu? That's all there is to it. Lu Qi said calmly. You don't have to sacrifice your innocence to help Brother Taishu. You can sacrifice your life too. His calm words were filled with sonorous power that shook people's hearts. Between chastity and her life, she chose to forsake the latter. She would rather preserve her life for Gu Taishu than destroy a single strand of her chastity. Gazing at Lu Qi's beautiful figure, even though he was her enemy, he still felt that it was an eyesore. Whoosh! Lu Qi took out a talisman treasure. The talisman treasure was deep purple in color and emitted a strange spiritual light. When the people from the Purple Cloud Palace saw this, their nervous faces immediately revealed looks of pleasant surprise. It's Senior Brother Gu's ancient spiritual body treasure talisman. Senior Brother Gu really dotes on Junior Sister Lu. He didn't hesitate to sacrifice his ancient spiritual body to forge a talisman treasure. Lu Qi clenched her fists, and the talisman treasure shattered. Purple heavenly splendor shot out from it. Purple light filled the sky. Everywhere it enveloped, the vital energy of all living beings froze. Even Qian Feng felt as if the zhenqi in his body had been frozen, unable to circulate even the slightest bit. Not good. It's Gu Taishu's ancient spiritual body magical power, the 9 transformations of the real spirit. Qian Feng's expression changed drastically. He had never expected that Gu Taishu would be willing to sacrifice the purity of his ancient spiritual body to refine an additional talisman treasure. Apart from Bai Lingtian, no one from the younger generation of the Heavenly Knife region could break this treasure talisman. Unless he reached the Wanxiang level, the purple light only had a sealing effect on vital energy. The all creation's mighty force could not be sustained. The power of the real spirit 9 transformations was well known among the strong men of the Heavenly Knife region. How could they underestimate it? He immediately flew to the ground. While there was still some quintessence left in his body, he quickly descended so that he would not lose the ability to fly and fall from the sky. The people of the Purple Cloud Palace reacted quickly. Each of them took out a round magic treasure from their sleeve. The white jade light that shot out enveloped their bodies. The white jade light neutralized most of the purple light, so that they could still circulate a small part of their quintessence. Although it was not enough to kill all of them, it was more than enough to escape. All of you leave. Lu Qi raised the treasure talisman and said without turning her head. The people of the Purple Cloud Palace were overjoyed, but they were stunned. Senior Sister Lu, what about you? I can't leave. You go first, Lu Qi said. The people of the Purple Cloud Palace were shocked. Activating the treasure talisman required continuous infusion of vital energy. One person had to stay. Swoosh. Lu Qi flipped her sleeves, and a book emitting a white light floated in her palm. Take this book with you. Tell Brother Taishu that Qi has let him down. Lu Qi threw the Book of Yang out. The people of the Purple Cloud Palace were shocked. Lu Qi had chosen to stay. With her loyalty to Gu Taishu, she would not live in this world. When they escaped with the Book of Yang, Lu Qi would choose to commit suicide. What they did not understand was the meaning of Lu Qi's last apology. Had Lu Qi let Gu Taishu down? Time waited for no man, and the treasure talisman could not last long. The man with the pointy chin nodded and grabbed the Book of Yang. He looked at Lu Qi's back and said, "Okay, I will deliver your message." At this moment, the man with the pointy chin's tone suddenly changed, and a mocking sneer appeared on his lips. But not now. Bang! The man with the pointy chin suddenly did something unexpected. He hit Lu Chuyi's back with his palm. The huge palm force penetrated Lu Chuyi's chest, and her internal organs were severely injured. Lu Chuyi, who was holding the treasure talisman and fighting the enemy with all her might, could not guard against a counterattack from behind. With a painful groan, her body flew forward like a butterfly, and her blood stained the blue sky. Zhao Li, you betrayed us! The rest of the people of the Purple Cloud Palace were shocked and roared. It was not a secret that the Heavenly Knife region had planted their own disciples in the sects of the Blessed and Heavenly Lands, just like how the Blessed and Heavenly Lands had planted talented experts in the Heavenly Knife region. However, Zhao Li, who was ranked third in the Purple Cloud Palace, a core disciple among the core disciples, was actually a well-hidden traitor. Suddenly, they understood why the news of Emoji Dao's Yin-Yang Divine Book had been leaked so quickly. And why couldn't they escape the pursuit of the experts of the Heavenly Knife region? It was because the traitor kept providing them with the specific location. Lu Chuyi was seriously injured, and her meridians were broken. She could not operate her vital energy, and the treasure talisman immediately dimmed without the support of her vital energy. The endless purple splendor in the sky quickly faded, and a large number of experts of the Heavenly Knife region, who were suppressed, quickly recovered the control of their vital energy. Don't worry about me, run! Lu Chuyi knew that the situation was hopeless. She was still retreating, and she shouted. The people of the Purple Cloud Palace gritted their teeth and fled before the experts of the Heavenly Knife region recovered. Let's find Senior Brother Gu. Only he can save Junior Sister Lu. But they knew that it would be too late when Senior Brother Gu came back. Even if Junior Sister Lu was not killed, she would have been played by Qian Feng, and her chastity would be gone. For Lu Chuyi, who was as pure as ice and as clean as jade, who valued her chastity far more than her life, she would kill herself before the enemy did it. Swoosh! A group of human figures streaked across the sky and disappeared. When the purple splendor in the sky dissipated, and the experts of the Heavenly Knife region regained their mobility, they had already escaped from the sensing range. Zhao Li touched his sharp chin and handed over the Book of Yang with a smile. Qian Feng operated the vital energy in his body and grabbed the Book of Yang. He praised, "Well done. Thank goodness I left you a way out. When we return to the Heavenly Knife region, I will definitely ask for the region master's credit." Zhao Li said, "It is my honor to serve the region master. Senior brother, please give me some men to hunt down those defeated soldiers. They know my real identity, and they must not be left alive." "No need, the region master has ordered that there is no need to continue planting spies in the glittering jewel wonderland. You will come back to report sooner or later." Qian Feng looked at the Book of Yang in his hand, and then at Lu Chuyi, who was lying on the ground and seriously injured. His eyes shone with a bright light. "Besides, I have already gotten what I wanted. So what if those defeated soldiers escape?" Zhao Li rolled his eyes and glanced at Lu Chuyi, who was covered in blood and on the verge of passing out. He showed a trace of pity. Such a beautiful woman was about to be defiled. "He, Senior Martial Brother Qian, this woman has a lofty personality. Once she wakes up, she will most likely commit suicide. Senior Martial Brother, if you want to have a taste of this heaven's chosen one, now is the time." Zhao Li smiled. The rest of the people of the Heavenly Knife region also smiled knowingly. Qian Feng, apart from cultivating martial arts, was only interested in one other thing in his life: women. Moreover, only those famous and outstanding women would be able to catch his eye. Lu Chuyi, known as the first female heaven ruler of the Blessed and Heavenly Lands, was a rare beauty. Qian Feng had coveted her for a long time. Qian Feng gazed at Lu Chuyi's slender figure lying on the ground. Her slender legs, her slender waist, her snow-white neck, her delicate and elegant face, and her blurred eyes, which were half awake. Qian Feng stared at Lu Chuyi, who was lying on the ground. Licking his lips, Qian Feng's index finger twitched. He raised his hand and pointed. An invisible force restrained the soft Lu Chui. He said, "You guys rest here. I'll be right back." Holding Lu Chui's slender body, Qian Feng tiptoed away from the crowd and came to a flat bluestone in a quiet valley. He waved his sleeves, and Lu Chui was laid flat on the ground. Her soft body was exposed to Qian Feng, completely defenseless. Qian Feng's eyes were burning. His mouth was dry and his abdomen was swollen. "Lu Chui, I'll have a taste of you myself." Qian Feng's body shook and his clothes were torn to shreds. At the same time, he clawed at Lu Chui's dress. He wanted to remove the sacred snow-white peaks hidden deep inside. However, just as his palm was about to reach her, a ball of wine-red light appeared around Lu Chui's body without warning. Then, her body disappeared and his clawed hand missed. The power of space. Qian Feng's expression changed. Without thinking, Qian Feng retreated hastily. The moment he retreated, a half-round, half-yellow ball fell from the sky, shattering the bluestone under his feet along with the land. Qian Feng broke out in a cold sweat. The ball almost brushed past him. The cold, oppressive force made Qian Feng feel like he was facing a mortal fairy. It was as if he would be crushed to pieces if he came into contact with it. "Who is it?" He was shocked and angry. Someone had ruined his fun. He looked up and saw a silver-masked, white-haired silhouette floating in the void. His right hand was holding Lu Chui. With a wave of his left hand, the terrifying ball flew back into his palm like a feather. Su Yu looked down at him and stared at the space ring on his fingertip, showing a hint of interest. Su Yu heard everything that was said between the two of them. Mo Jidao was a heaven-defying genius of the starry sky thousands of years ago. He was the first divine path, strong man to condense the pure divine decree to the peak. In a sense, he was the forerunner of Su Yu and Gu Taishu. His path to the divine path had an unimaginable significance. Unfortunately, even when Qian Feng was at his most careless, he still managed to dodge Su Yu's attack. The commotion here was not small. The other strong men of the Heavenly Knife region would be rushing over soon. 2 fists were no match for 4 hands, not to mention that there were more than 80 people on the other side, and they all had treasures that allowed them to travel through the void. Su Yu grabbed Lu Chui's palm and infused it with vital energy. The wisp of vital energy entered the talisman through her jade-like hand. The dim talisman once again burst into a brilliant purple splendor, enveloping the sky. "Stop!" Qian Feng was shocked. However, under the purple light, no one could avoid it except for the one who activated it. His vital energy was frozen. Qian Feng could not use his magical powers, and he could not even open his space ring. He was naked and unarmed. Su Yu's eyes turned cold. He flew down, and 5 demonic dragons whizzed out of his body, roaring as they swooped down to attack Qian Feng. "The vital energy seal is no match for a clown," Qian Feng bellowed. He took a deep breath, clenched his fists, squatted down, and was as steady as a rock. When the demonic dragons arrived, his fists punched out like 2 dragons emerging from the sea. With the dull sound of thunder, the 2 attacking demonic dragons were punched through by his fists, turning into phantoms and flying away. Su Yu's pupils shrank slightly. Not only was this person's cultivation top-notch, but his body was also extraordinarily strong. He was only slightly weaker than Yu Liang of the Heaven's Craftsman faction. However, that was not Su Yu's goal. As the demonic dragons collapsed, a remnant shadow glided out of Su Yu's sleeve, cutting a pitch-black crack in the void, and silently sliced through Qian Feng's right palm. Qian Feng's right palm fell immediately, and the cut on his arm was as smooth as a mirror. When Qian Feng noticed it, an invisible thread wrapped around his arm and flew in Su Yu's direction. "My space ring." Qian Feng immediately realized Su Yu's true intentions. His face changed, and he exerted strength in his legs. His whole body was like a spring, leaping thousands of feet into the air. He quickly caught up with the palm and grabbed it with his left hand. However, at that moment, a rapidly oppressive black shadow attacked. It was the horrifying ball. Qian Feng's face fell, and he had to withdraw his hand. He stepped on the void and changed his direction, brushing past the ball. Having lost the ability to leap, his body fell in a state of free fall, and the distance between him and Su Yu was getting farther and farther. Swoosh! The right palm flew back into Su Yu's palm. Su Yu smiled. "Thank you for your help." Grabbing Qian Feng's palm with his left hand and the unconscious Lu Chui with his right, Su Yu flew away with the wind. "Ah! I'm going to tear you into pieces!" Qian Feng stood on the ground, watching Su Yu escape, and roared madly. The beauty he was about to taste was snatched away, and even Mo Jidao's Book of Yang, which he had painstakingly obtained, was snatched away. Qian Feng, who had never tasted defeat in his life, felt utterly humiliated. What made it worse was that if Bai Lingtian found out that he had lost the Book of Yang because of his lust for a woman, he would be severely punished. When Su Yu was far away, the purple light dissipated. The affected strong men of the Heavenly Knife region rushed over. Seeing Qian Feng's naked body with his severed arm, they looked at each other in dismay. Could that woman have suddenly launched an attack, causing Qian Feng to go for wool and come home shorn? Go after him immediately! Qian Feng's face was flushed red, and he bellowed in anger. The vital energy in his body rolled out in all directions like an avalanche. Swish! His figure was like lightning chasing after Su Yu. As for Su Yu, he held Lu Chui with one hand, and the other was bursting with flames, burning Qian Feng's right palm into ashes. Not a single drop of blood was left, ensuring that he would not be pursued by the scent. Among the ashes there was a space ring. It belonged to Qian Feng. Mo Jidao's Book of Yang was in it. Chapter 1002. Apart from being easy to hide in, the deep forest also had another use. There were more than just challengers from the Heavenly Knife region and the Purple Cloud Palace in the core of the forest. If they entered the forest, they could confuse their pursuers. Half a day later, he returned to the depths of the forest. The other party had used the ability to cross the void several times to chase after him, but Su Yu had sensed the space fluctuations in advance and avoided them. Although it was frightening, it was not dangerous. Along the way, as Su Yu had expected, he discovered many unfamiliar challengers. They didn't belong to either the Blessed and Heavenly Lands or the Heavenly Knife region. Their presence had indeed diverted the attention of the Heavenly Knife region's powerful fighters, and the number of pursuers gradually decreased. After about 4 hours there was still no sign of the enemy. Su Yu's eyes flashed as he landed on a cliff wall. There was a nest dug by a flying demonic beast halfway up the cliff wall. Moreover, it was covered by the clouds, making it very well hidden. In the cave, Su Yu put Lu Chui down and placed his index and middle fingers on her wrist. He then transferred a shred of vital energy into her body and circulated it throughout her body. After the inspection, Su Yu furrowed his brows. Her injuries weren't serious, but they weren't light either. She was bathed in blood, and her genuine qi and physical strength were exhausted. But these were only superficial wounds. The most serious was the palm strike from the traitor of the Purple Cloud Palace, Zhao Li. It was both ruthless and accurate. Several of her meridians were broken and her internal organs were severely injured. Coupled with the lack of genuine qi in her body, she had lost the ability to heal herself and needed external treatment. With Su Yu's level 9 Fairy Realm vital energy, he was barely able to reconnect her broken internal energy channels and heal her internal injuries. However, even if she was healed, Lu Chui wouldn't be able to fight intensely for a short period of time. She needs someone to look after her. Looking at Qin Ya's unconscious face, the scenes that had played out with her in the mysterious Heavenly Divine Pavilion flowed through his mind. At first, he looked up at her in shock, but then he hugged her in the snowy night when she was in trouble. Finally, they had intercourse in the sea of fire. The memory stopped at the end, and some guilt filled his heart. Su Yu could not let go of the fact that he had stolen the chastity of a woman who already had a lover. "I've saved you once, so we're even," Su Yu mumbled to himself. Given the perils of the glittering jewel wonderland, it was an extremely dangerous thing to do to treat someone's injuries with all his vital energy. Moreover, they were being pursued by the heavenly knife region. Now that he had helped her, he had repaid what he owed her. Su Yu supported her with his vital energy, and sat down cross-legged in front of him. A pair of palms gently pressed against her back. Soft touch, like holding cotton, warm and comfortable. Su Yu's eyes were clear. Within his enormous dantian, vital energy was surging and pouring into Lu Chuyi's body. Powerful vital energy surged into Lu Chuyi's meridians. A sharp pain was transmitted to the depths of Lu Chuyi's brain, waking her up from her coma. Lu Chuyi's clear eyes slowly opened. After a moment of confusion, she slammed her hands on the ground, as if she was about to shoot up. She shouted softly, "Who is it?" In his memories, he was heavily injured by Zhao Li. Naturally, he realized that he might have fallen into Qian Feng's hands. However, before he could jump up, a big hand pressed down on his shoulder. Su Yu's voice came from behind him. "Try to guide me to inject vital energy into your body to repair your internal energy channels." Lu Chuyi was startled and gradually stopped. Lu Chuyi exclaimed, "Su Yuxian?" After asking, he turned around and saw that it was indeed Su Yuxian. "It's my honor that you remember my voice." Su Yu was slightly surprised that Lu Chuyi would remember his voice. There wasn't much interaction between Su Yuxian and Lu Chuyi. Lu Chuyi turned around and stared at Su Yu. Through the silver mask, she stared at his eyes. A hint of darkness flashed in the depths of her pupils. "Master Su is extremely talented. Of course I recognize you." Actually, it was all because Su Yuxian was extremely similar to the silhouette of the silver-haired youth that remained in her mind. Unknowingly, she had paid more attention to Su Yuxian and remembered his voice. "Miss Lu, you flatter me." Su Yu retracted his palm from her shoulder, once again injecting vital energy into his hands. Lu Chuyi turned around, lowering her head in silence. She did not know why, but she trusted Su Yuxian, just like she trusted the silver-haired youth, Yin. "Thank you, Master Su," Lu Chuyi said in a low voice. She closed her eyes slowly and guided his vital qi to repair his meridians and injuries. After the vital energy had completed a great cycle, the broken internal energy channels were completely repaired. All that was left were her damaged internal organs, which still needed a great cycle. The so-called Great Cycle referred to the circulation of vital energy through all the internal energy channels in the body. A Great Cycle referred to the 9 main internal energy channels and 81 small internal energy channels, all of which were circulated once. "Master Su, I will heal myself from now on. Since my internal energy channels have recovered, I can absorb vital energy on my own," Lu Chuyi said. The body of a divine master was far superior to that of a fairy. The amount of vital energy needed to complete a great cycle was far greater than that of a fairy's internal energy channels. For a late-stage 8th-grade divine master like Lu Chuyi, the amount of vital energy needed to complete a great cycle was even greater. The fact that Su Yu, with his 9th-grade fairy cultivation, had completed a great cycle in her body had already surprised her. It seemed that Su Yuxian's fairy foundation was extremely solid, far superior to that of an ordinary 9th-grade fairy. The next treatment required the 49 small internal energy channels near her internal organs to circulate more than 10 small cycles. The amount of vital energy required was no less than a great cycle. With Su Yu's cultivation, it was obvious that he could not continue. Su Yu closed his eyes, not even lifting his head as he said, "Focus on guiding me. You don't have to worry about the vital energy." Lu Chuyi was surprised. She looked back and was surprised to see that Su Yu's face was still the same, even though he had injected so much vital energy. Feeling anxious, Lu Chui continued to guide the vital energy to heal her internal injuries. Every time she completed a great cycle, she would look back at Su Yu's appearance. Every time, she became more and more surprised. It's already been 3 small cycles. Is there any more vital energy left? Lu Chui was shocked. Usually, during the fairy period, the more vigorous the vital energy in the dantian was, the easier it was to condense the fetal crystal. Moreover, the fetal crystal would become more solid, and the explosive power would be far greater than that of the same level. When Brother Taishu was a 9th grade fairy, the amount of vital energy in his dantian was equivalent to 1 great cycle and 5 small cycles for me. He has already achieved 1 great cycle and 3 small cycles. He is not far behind Brother Taishu. Lu Chui was secretly surprised. She had thought that Su Yuxian was only proficient in Mu words. She did not expect the fairy's foundation to be so terrifyingly deep. But soon, her surprise turned into astonishment. Before long, Su Yu had completed the 5th small cycle. Moreover, there was not much change in his expression. How did he train his dantian? Lu Chui was shocked. The training of the dantian required great perseverance. It required suppressing one's cultivation and forcibly tempering the dantian with vital energy, forcing the dantian to become more solid and able to contain more vital energy. Gu Taishu's reserve of vital energy might not be the greatest on the continent, but it was more than enough to rank among the top 10. The fact that Su Yu had surpassed him with such ease had completely overturned Lu Chui's perception. Su Yu, on the other hand, looked calm as he continued to operate the vital energy in his body. The 6th cycle, the 7th cycle, the 8th cycle. The shock in Lu Chui's heart could no longer be described with words. Su Yu had undergone a subversive change in her heart. He was not a nameless challenger. He was obviously a top-notch heaven ruler who had been overlooked. Although it was impossible for him to catch up with a top-notch heaven ruler like Gu Taishu, it was not a problem for him to look down on most of his peers. The 9th cycle, the 10th cycle, everything was as Su Yu had expected. He had just used up all the vital energy in his body, and his face turned pale for the first time. Lu Chui's beautiful eyes shone brightly, as if she was getting to know Su Yu all over again. She looked him up and down. Master Su, the strength of your dantian is unprecedented. Not to mention her, even the true man of the purple cloud had never seen such a powerful and mutated dantian. After all, rebuilding the dantian was easier said than done. But which martial artist would be willing to destroy their own dantian and start all over again? Unless they were in a desperate situation like Su Yu's, where his dantian was shattered, no one would try it. Su Yu breathed out a mouthful of murky air and weaved signs with his hands. Without opening his eyes, he said, "Miss Lu, hurry up and recover your vital energy. Time and tide wait for no man. The pursuers could be here at any time." Sensing Su Yu's indifference, Lu Chui stared into his eyes. Her lips parted slightly as if she wanted to say something, but she nodded silently. "Thank you." She did not ask why Su Yu had helped her out of nowhere. They had never met before. What was Su Yu's motive for doing so, even though he was facing the danger of running out of vital energy and was being chased by soldiers? Perhaps she already had the answer in her heart. An hour had passed, and they were both racing against time to recover their vital energy. With the help of various elixirs and medicines, Su Yu had recovered 30% of his energy, and so had Lu Chui. It was barely enough to escape, but it was dangerous to face the enemy, especially when there were too many of them. Just as they were about to continue, Su Yu's ears twitched, and his eyes widened. 5 demonic dragons pierced out of his chest and flew into the cave on the cliff. A horrible shriek was heard from outside the cave, and the sound of something tearing through the air disappeared rapidly. Su Yu rushed out of the cave in a flash, as fast as lightning. A blurry figure disappeared into the horizon. He had lost his target even if he wanted to chase after it. Looking at the sky again, black ashes were falling, and he could vaguely make out the clothes of the Heavenly Knife region. One had been killed, and the other had escaped. We have to leave quickly. Suyu frowned slightly. The other party had the magical power to move through the void. As long as they locked onto their general location, it was only a matter of time before they caught up to them. Lu Chui pursed her red lips and looked at Suyu. She folded her sleeves and bowed to him. Solemnly, she said, "Master Su, I will never forget your kindness in saving my life. However, the target of the Heavenly Knife region is me, and it has nothing to do with you. You should leave quickly. I will stay here alone to buy you some time." Suyu sighed silently. How could he leave Lu Chui alone? Since he had not helped her resolve her difficulties, how could he let her go? Moreover, with her wounded body, she couldn't buy time at all. In a few rounds, she would be subdued by a 9th-grade almighty like Zhaoli, not to mention Qianfeng, whose abilities were unknown. How can you see your brother Taishu if you die? Come with me, we might have a way to deal with them, Suyu said, his eyes gleaming. He had already made up his mind. Lu Chui was stunned. She looked up at Suyu, her heart trembling. After a moment of hesitation, she looked into Suyu's eyes and said, "Master Su, may I ask if you know a man named Inu?" Suyu was touched. She still remembered him. For a moment, Suyu wanted to admit it, but he shook his head and said softly, "I don't know him." When he finished speaking, he stepped out with his hands clasped behind his back and strode deeper into the forest. Half a cup of tea's time after they left, 5 cracks appeared in the air above the cliff. Qianfeng, Zhaoli, and the other strong men of the Heavenly Knife region stepped out of them. Zhaoli stared at the cave and said, "I will go in and search." Qianfeng glanced at the cave and looked deeper into the forest. He said coldly, "There is no need to look at the cave. Unless Suyu and the others were careless, they would not dare to stay in the cave." But judging from the situation along the way, Suyu was more quick-witted and had headed straight for the core area of the forest. How could he continue to stay in the cave? Target, the core area of the bookyard. Qianfeng's severed right hand had recovered. He clenched it into a fist, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. "Lure me into the depths of the forest. Fine, I'll play with you this once." Swish. The dark mass of challengers was like a dark cloud, approaching the center of the bookyard. Such a huge force could not be stopped by a single soldier. Although Suyu had many tricks up his sleeve, he could not deal with so many strong men. Once they caught up to him, they would definitely die, unless they fled for their lives. Facing danger, Suyu and Lu Chui flew to the center of the bookyard. Although it was the center of the bookyard, there was no one there at the moment. On one hand, the battle between the Heavenly Knife region and the Purple Cloud Palace had scared away the strong men nearby, causing them to scatter to other areas. On the other hand, the news that the strong men of the Heavenly Knife region were approaching the area had spread like wildfire, and the challengers had fled. Why did we return to the center area? Lu Chui was puzzled. At this moment, unless they found Gu Taishu or the people of the Red Blood Palace, they might stand a chance if they joined forces. There was no chance of victory with just the two of them. Suyu looked around and narrowed his eyes. "This place is our hope of escaping." He stroked the ring on his fingertip, and 9 spheres of the same size floated on the surface of Suyu's body. 8 of them were silvery white, and 1 was half blue and half yellow. Looking at the 8 silvery white spheres, Lu Chui took out a section of golden bamboo from her sleeve. At the moment, the bamboo was trembling lightly in her palm, emitting a continuous low hum. Resonance. Lu Chui was shocked. Her heavenly orchid silver bamboo was resonating with the 9 spheres. All of a sudden, a thought flashed across Lu Chui's mind. A fully matured heavenly orchid silver bamboo. Her eyes were fixed on the 9 spheres, and her pretty face was filled with excitement and surprise. She almost cried out in surprise. No one knew better than her how precious the heavenly orchid silver bamboo was. It was the greatest divine bamboo in the Jojo continent. The all creation's old monsters had to water it day and night for hundreds of years before it matured. In this world, it was almost extinct. Even if it survived, it was just a young one like the one in her hand. Seeing the matured heavenly orchid silver bamboo with her own eyes was like a dream to her. How could she have known that the source of the heavenly orchid silver bamboo was the 2 seeds of the heavenly orchid silver bamboo that she had gifted them all those years ago? That was why her heavenly orchid silver bamboo was resonating with the 8 silvery white spheres before her. It was because they came from the same source. Su Yu's heart stirred, and he looked at the familiar heavenly orchid silver bamboo in Lu Chuyi's hand. In the past, he had been so envious of the astonishing power of the heavenly orchid silver bamboo. But now, with the passage of time, even Su Yu found it difficult to take notice of the silver bamboo. Turning a blind eye to her expression, Su Yu weaved signs with both hands and pointed at the 9 spheres from afar. The 8 spheres immediately emitted space ripples, hiding the 9th sphere in the void. Unless an all-creation's old monster, who was proficient in the power of space, came personally, it would be impossible to detect their presence. After doing this, Su Yu's eyes flashed. He glanced at the tree of life around him and said, "Miss Lu, are you interested in helping me chop some trees?" Chop trees? Lu Chuyi was obviously taken aback. The strong men of the Heavenly Knife region were approaching. Was there still time to chop trees? Chapter 1003. With suspicion, Lu Chuyi wielded the heavenly orchid silver bamboo and slashed at the nearest pitch-black tree. The heavenly orchid silver bamboo was indestructible. A smooth cut could be seen at the root of a huge, pitch-black tree that was 1,000 feet tall. The Book of Life condensed at the top of the tree lost its foundation and began to spontaneously combust. Just like when it fell to the ground, it turned into ashes that drifted into the void. Immediately afterward, the entire tree also turned into nothingness, leaving behind a huge crater, telling the story of the tree of life that once stood here. Is one enough? Lu Chuyi looked at Su Yu and asked. Su Yu's lips curled into a mysterious smile. How is one enough? 5 demonic dragons roared out of Su Yu's chest and flew around. Whether it was the demonic dragon's body, head, or long tail, as long as it touched the tree of life, it would be reduced to nothingness along with the Book of Life. In the blink of an eye, a demonic dragon swept through 7 or 8 trees of life. The 5 demonic dragons flew out together. In a short time, 40 to 50 300-meter-tall trees of life were razed to the ground, leaving pockmarked pits of various sizes. Lu Chuyi clicked her tongue. What are you doing? Even if we can't use these books of life, isn't it too much to destroy them? To Lu Chuyi, who was an 8th grade almighty, the lifetime experience of the previous challengers didn't mean much to her. But to the other challengers, it was a precious treasure that was comparable to creation. Destroying it just like that was tantamount to cutting off the other trial-takers' chances. Su Yu only smiled and did not speak. He continued to use the 9 dragons' devil-subduing art, destroying the tree of life one after another. Lu Chuyi stared at Su Yu for a moment. She had no choice but to believe him. Not only did she use the heavenly orchid silver bamboo, but she also used all of her golden leaf. Walala! Dense cracking sounds rang out as the trees of life disappeared one after another under the 2's wanton assault. If there were other trial-takers here, they would definitely gnash their teeth at their actions. Suddenly, a faintly discernible fluctuation appeared. It was a very faint fluctuation that was hard to detect. It was as if something was silently approaching. Trial-takers, have you had enough? A hollow voice suddenly came from the void. Lu Chuyi was shocked and looked around. Who is it? Come out. Su Yu acted as if he hadn't heard anything. Without turning his head, he said coldly, If you know what's good for you, stay out of the business of the Heavenly Knife region. Heavenly Knife region? Lu Chuyi was startled, and a trace of understanding flashed across her beautiful eyes. Since the Heavenly Knife region has no use for the Book of Life here, of course we have to destroy it. Otherwise, it would be a waste for the other challengers. Lu Chui said coldly. The heavenly orchid silver bamboo and the golden leaves danced rapidly in her palm, destroying one tree of life after another. The hollow voice was mixed with a trace of deep anger. Are all of you challengers so selfish and self-centered? Even if I can't use it, I'll destroy it and prevent other trial takers from obtaining it. Suyu stopped and looked around with narrowed eyes. I'll give you one last piece of advice. If you don't want to get yourself killed, don't meddle in the affairs of the Heavenly Knife region. The two of us are only the vanguard. The main force is still behind us. If you don't want to die, scram immediately. Hearing this, the surrounding air suddenly froze, and a murderous aura slowly descended with killing intent. Swoosh! A whirlwind suddenly appeared in the vast, empty area that had been razed to the ground. Within the whirlwind, a huge 3-foot-long book of black, white, and blue colors floated in the void. The newcomer wasn't a human, but a strange book. Book? What are you? Suyu frowned, looking a little surprised. A furious voice came from the 3-colored book. I am the guardian of this place. In the words of you challengers, I am the yard master of the bookyard. What? The yard master of the bookyard? Su Yu and Lu Chui's faces were filled with horror. Traces of panic filled their faces. Impossible. It is said that the yard master of the bookyard never shows himself. No matter how the Book of Life is taken, the yard master won't be drawn here. Lu Chui was extremely surprised. The 3-colored book's tone was contemptuous. Of course, I don't need to show myself when I take the Book of Life. But you have destroyed the Tree of Life wantonly and affected the trials of the other challengers. How can I not show myself? Lu Chui still didn't believe it. Then why has no one seen you before? The 3-colored book was surrounded by wisps of murderous intent. Because I only show myself when someone destroys the bookyard maliciously. As for those who destroy the bookyard, I leave them in the bookyard and turn them into a Tree of Life. Why do you think no one has ever seen me before? Because those who had seen it were all dead. Su Yu and Lu Chui felt their blood run cold. It had summoned the bookyard. The sense of danger it exuded far exceeded that of the garden master. The garden master was a plant creature after all and didn't have a strong murderous intent. But the bookyard master had read the life experiences of countless challengers and had long seen through the affairs of the world. It was aloof and emotionless. Killing, to it, was just a trivial matter. Especially when the person it killed was a daring and malicious perpetrator like Su Yu, who had destroyed the bookyard. Do you think that since the beginning of time, your so-called Heavenly Knife region is the only influence that wants to destroy the bookyard and prevent others from progressing? Haven't you ever wondered why the bookyard hasn't been destroyed since the beginning of time? The yard master's tone was full of disdain. Indeed, in the Jojo continent there was a divine realm that could be called a land of creation. Or it would be occupied by powerful influences and used only by their own disciples. Or it would be burned to the ground. Only then would the great influences feel at ease. However, the bookyard had been safe and sound since the beginning of time. It was obvious that there was something fishy about it. The fishy thing was that the yard master, the guardian of the bookyard, had been preventing the yard master from being destroyed since the beginning of time. Every time it appeared, it would be the day of a massacre. Lu Chui stepped back slowly, her eyes filled with terror. Senior brother, we seem to have gotten into trouble. Su Yu also looked fearful. Ask the faction for help immediately. No matter how powerful the yard master is, she's alone. The two of them immediately turned around and fled. The yard master said indifferently, I haven't killed anyone for dozens of years. The challengers have forgotten my existence. A thick murderous intent shot up into the sky. Looking coldly in the direction where Su Yu had fled, the yard master snorted coldly. A crack in the space appeared around it, and it spun and disappeared into it. Su Yu and Lu Chui had only escaped a few hundred miles when a crack appeared in front of them. "Oh no! Space teleportation!" Lu Chui exclaimed. She grabbed Su Yu and flew backward. Buzz! A gust of all creation's mighty force penetrated the void and killed the two of them. "Fight! Hold on until the faction's reinforcements arrive, then we'll be saved," Su Yu bellowed anxiously. He flung out 5 writing brushes, each of which was of a different color. The writing brushes floated in the air and shot out 5 beams of light of different colors. They shrouded a part of the sky and engulfed the cracked void. Enveloped by the 5-colored light beams, the void vibrated. A 3-colored book was sealed by a gust of 5-colored light and was pushed out of the crack in the void. The Yard Master's indifferent voice revealed a hint of surprise. "What a powerful sealing formation! Even a Stage 1 all-creation strong man could seal it for a while." It stared at Su Yu coldly, its murderous intent increasing instead of diminishing. "You came prepared. Challengers of the Heavenly Knife region." In fact, it didn't know that this was the compressed version of the 5-elemental heaven extinguishing formation. Moreover, under Su Yu's control, it only exerted less than 1/10 of the power of the compressed version. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been difficult to seal it in the formation forever, let alone for a while. This was one of Su Yu's hidden trump cards. As Su Yu fled, he turned back and sneered. "Humph, I want your life. Wait for the arrival of the strong men of the Heavenly Knife region. I want you to die a horrible death." The Yard Master was completely infuriated. Suppressed by the 5-colored light beams, she bellowed angrily. Su Yu sneered and fled into the distant sky hand in hand with Lu Chui. It was only when Su Yu reached a mountain range that he stopped. Lu Chui's pretty eyes looked over, excitement and agitation lingering on her fair face. "So, this is the reason for cutting down the trees." Lu Chui looked at each other and smiled. "Wantonly destroying the forest to attract the Yard Master and then frame the Heavenly Knife region. But there's one thing I don't understand. How can you be sure that the Book Yard Master will show up because of the destruction of the forest? If she doesn't show up, won't you be wasting precious escape time?" Lu Chui's pretty eyes shone. Su Yu smiled confidently. "Didn't the Book Yard Master already answer that? There's only one explanation for a divine realm like the Book Garden not being forcefully occupied or destroyed by someone. Something is guarding the Book Garden. And for it to be able to protect the Book Garden from all the genius trial-takers of the past, the Guardian's cultivation should be at the all-creations level. It's very easy to guess its identity, the Book Garden Master. So, when I show up as the Destroyer, the Yard Master will show up." Lu Chui's eyes shone brilliantly. "Master, you have great foresight. Chui admires you." Su Yu laughed. Miss Lu's reaction isn't slow either. Without Lu Chui's cooperation, deceiving the Yard Master into believing that they were from the Heavenly Knife region wouldn't have been easy. Lu Chui's pretty face flushed. This was the first time she had deceived someone like this. "Master, have we succeeded just like that?" Lu Chui asked. The Yard Master was enraged and believed that they were challengers of the Heavenly Knife region. What would happen next was something to be anticipated. Su Yu shook his head slightly. "It's still not enough. The Heavenly Knife region isn't a fool. They won't fall for our tricks easily." Half a cup of tea later, 5 space cracks appeared in the center of the book yard. Qian Feng and the others stepped out of the cracks. There were more than 80 of them, and they were mighty and imposing. The aura they exuded was extraordinary. Su Yuxian. Qian Feng's eyes narrowed as he glanced around. Suddenly, his gaze froze and fixed on the multicolored brilliance in front of him. A 3-colored book was shrouded by the multicolored brilliance and suppressed to the point that it couldn't move. Qian Feng was startled at first, and then his expression changed. He was secretly shocked. The 5-elemental heaven extinguishing formation, the unique skill of the 5 golden light guards of the Central Prefecture's king. Impossible. Have they entered the glittering jewel wonderland too? Zhao Li also looked surprised and bewildered. His gaze passed through the multicolored brilliance and fell on the three-colored book. A sense of uneasiness welled up in his heart. Senior brother Qian, what is that book? It can't be a simple thing, can it? It can't be sealed and suppressed by the 5 elemental heaven extinguishing formation, right? Qian Feng looked at the book for a moment, and his pupils suddenly froze. Black, white, and blue, the three-colored divine book. It's the yard master of the book yard. One of the fiercest yard masters. A shiver of fear rippled from the depths of his heart. What? It's the yard master of the book yard. Zhao Li gasped. To them, the yard master was a dominator that they had to look up to. The gap between all creations and Almighty was such a despairing one after another. Upon hearing that, the strong men of the Heavenly Knife region turned pale. They couldn't help but look timid, not daring to advance any further. Qian Feng's eyes flickered again and again. If they retreated now, they could indeed stay away from the unknown danger. However, Mo Jidao's Book of Yang had been lost, and he couldn't report to Bai Lingtian. His fate would be just as terrible. Staring at the sealed yard master, Qian Feng bellowed in a low voice, "Don't be afraid, everyone. The book yard master has been sealed. If we pass through quickly, there shouldn't be any problem." With his reassurance, the challengers of the Heavenly Knife region calmed down a little. They walked in the direction of the seal, trembling with fear and trepidation. They were prepared to bypass it and continue their pursuit of Su Yu and the others. However, in the eyes of the yard master, they were approaching it step by step with ulterior motives. "Are you challengers of the Heavenly Knife region?" The book yard master stared at them and spoke for the first time. Qian Feng was instantly on guard. The rest of the challengers of the Heavenly Knife region also turned pale with fright. They were terrified and uneasy. They had been noticed by the yard master. Qian Feng suppressed the uneasiness in his heart and said calmly, "Yes, may I ask what advice you have for us, Lord Yard Master?" The yard master sneered. "You are extremely audacious. How would I dare to give you advice?" Qian Feng frowned discreetly. The tone of the book yard master didn't seem right. A thought flashed across Su Yu's mind. Qian Feng cupped his fists and said, "May I ask, yard master, have you fallen into the trap of some villain who is trying to incite us?" Upon hearing that, the yard master was taken aback. She asked coldly, "What do you mean?" Qian Feng pondered for a moment and said, "To be honest, we seized Mo Jidao's Book of Yang, but the Book of Yang was stolen by 2 people along the way. We chased them all the way, but they fled straight to the center of the book yard. I suspect that he must be plotting something by luring us deep into the Heavenly Knife region." The yard master looked doubtful. "Is that so? Just now, they claimed to be disciples of the Heavenly Knife region and wantonly destroyed the Tree of Life. Could it be that they wanted to infuriate me and then vent their anger on you?" Upon hearing that, the people of the Heavenly Knife region broke out in a cold sweat. No wonder the yard master treated them with such an attitude. It turned out that they had almost found Su Yu's way. Just the thought of being hunted by the yard master of an all-creation's old monster made everyone's hair stand on end, including Qian Feng. Fortunately, Qian Feng had foresight. He had foreseen things in advance and resolved the misunderstanding. At the same time, their hatred for Su Yu had reached a whole new level. What a vicious scheme! We were almost all killed by him. The challengers of the Heavenly Knife region were filled with righteous indignation. Su Yu's treacherous scheme had incurred the wrath of both men and gods. "Yard Master, this man is cunning and cunning. You can't trust him." Qian Feng clenched his teeth and cupped his fist. His heart was full of remorse. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have allowed the Book of Yang to be stolen for the sake of women. The yard master listened to the actions of the challengers of the Heavenly Knife region and said slowly, "I understand." Right at that moment, the 5 writing brushes dissipated and the yard master was freed. Looking around at the challengers of the Heavenly Knife region, the Yard Master said, "It seems like we have a common target." Qian Feng secretly heaved a sigh of relief. It was said that the Book Yard Master would kill anyone who saw it, but there were also rumors that it would never kill the innocent. "We are willing to assist the Yard Master in searching for this thief," Qian Feng said. The Yard Master nodded. "All right, I'll make an exception and cooperate with the challengers to capture this evil thief." The two parties had reached an agreement, and things were developing in the opposite direction of Su Yu. "All of you come forward with my scent. If you find this thief, just activate your scent and I'll sense it immediately." "I'll kill this thief," the Book Yard Master said. Upon hearing that, the challengers of the Heavenly Knife region turned pale. In that case, their whereabouts would be known by the Yard Master. If it wanted to harm them, it would be a piece of cake. But on second thought, if the Yard Master really wanted to harm them, it could do it now. Why go through so much trouble? With unease, the challengers of the Heavenly Knife region reluctantly accepted it. Qian Feng braced himself and stepped forward, saying, "I'll go first." When he came before the Yard Master, Qian Feng looked relaxed on the surface, but he was on his guard. The Yard Master emitted bursts of tricolored light and landed slowly on top of Qian Feng's head. The Yard Master nodded with satisfaction. "Don't worry, as long as you cooperate sincerely, I'll reward you, however," before its voice trailed off. Chapter 1004. The Meteor Light Stream Great Formation. 8 silvery white balls surrounded a half-blue and half-yellow ball. They descended abruptly, trapping the Yard Master in the center. Coincidentally, Qian Feng, who was also close at hand, was excluded. Qian Feng was shocked. He subconsciously thought it was the Yard Master's doing, so he retreated hastily. In the Yard Master's eyes, it was a premeditated move. "You challengers really can't be trusted." The Yard Master sneered disdainfully. "Do you think I need the help of weak challengers like you to find someone in the Book Yard? I asked you to come close and be stained with my scent to test if you were up to no good. Sure enough, my guess was right. You are in cahoots with the two so-called evil thieves. Everything is as he said. Your goal is not to destroy the Book Yard, but to capture me so that you can open the rumored 6th yard." The Yard Master had read many challengers and was familiar with deception. How could she easily believe Qian Feng's one-sided story? Pretending to cooperate was to lure the snake out of its hole and expose its fox's tail. The ambush happened at the moment when the two of them came into contact. Qian Feng, who was very close to the Yard Master, was spared. Would anyone believe that it was a coincidence? Qian Feng, who was flying backward, suddenly realized something was wrong. He hurriedly said, "Yard Master, please calm down. The ambush was not set by us. This must be the evil thief's plan. His goal is to get rid of us through your hands." It would have been better if he hadn't said it. As soon as the words left his mouth, the Yard Master said disdainfully, "So in the eyes of you challengers, the Book Yard Master is so easy to fool? If it was really an ambush set by the evil thief, why didn't he ambush you too? You are the biggest threat to them, aren't you?" Qian Feng was speechless, but he knew very well that this was exactly Su Yu's goal. He could kill Qian Feng alone, but there was still Zhao Li and the huge force of more than 80 people. Su Yu's real goal was not to kill Qian Feng, but to get rid of all of them through the Yard Master. However, the Yard Master was arrogant and self-opinionated. How could she listen to Qian Feng's one-sided story? At this moment, he felt as if yellow mud had fallen into his pants. Even if it wasn't sh*t, it was still sh*t. Sensing that the Book Yard Master was about to fly into a rage, Qian Feng shouted, "People of the Heavenly Knife region, retreat quickly while he's still sealed by the formation, and find senior brother by to attack." Upon hearing this, the Yard Master sneered, "You're finally telling the truth? You took the opportunity to set up an array formation and let the stronger trial takers take action. I will not let you off." A mouthful of old blood was stuck in Qian Feng's throat, and he was almost angered to death. This idiot who thinks he's smart. He's still helping the person earn money after being sold. But the most abominable one was the guy wearing the silver mask. He hated Su Yu to the core. It was bad enough that Su Yu had alarmed the book yard and framed the challengers of the Heavenly Knife region. But in the end, Su Yu had left a trick up his sleeve. Just when they were about to cooperate with the yard master, Su Yu suddenly struck and completely infuriated the suspicious yard master. If he didn't have such a backup plan, Su Yu would have been the one to die. But this finishing touch made it impossible for them to defend themselves. "Run!" Qian Feng shouted. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Upon seeing this, the people of the Heavenly Knife region dared not hesitate at all. They fled in terror. As for Su Yu, he couldn't care less. The yard master was surrounded by the meteor light stream great formation. She stared coldly at the fleeing strong men of the Heavenly Knife region. "None of you can escape. All of you shall stay and become the tree of life." "Open!" the yard master bellowed. Her whole body emitted the all creation's mighty force. The 8 silver round pearls that surrounded her were shaken off after a momentary stalemate, disappearing into the void. At the same time, the 5 scattered writing brushes on the ground were drawn into the void as well. The yard master stared coldly in the direction of the void. "I'll settle the score with the 2 of you at the end." When she finished speaking, she spun around and disappeared into the void, chasing after the people of the Heavenly Knife region. In the distance, a large crack in the void appeared around Su Yu's body. The 8 silver pearls, together with the underworld pearl and the compressed version of the 5 elemental heaven extinguishing formation, returned to his side. Before Lu Chui could see what the 5 writing brushes were, Su Yu retrieved them. "Things are developing as expected. We're safe for the time being. As long as we leave the flower yard before the yard master returns, we'll be safe." Su Yu's lips curled into a smile. Although Lu Chui didn't see what had happened, the oppression from the book yard master had weakened considerably. She knew that Su Yu's goal had been achieved. Looking into Su Yu's eyes, Lu Chui's pretty face showed some respect. "There's no need to leave the flower yard. As long as we meet up with Brother Taishu, it won't matter even if the yard master catches up with us," Lu Chui said. "Gu Taishu." A murderous glint flashed across Su Yu's eyes. Nodding slightly, Su Yu said, "I'll escort you there." With Lu Chui's injuries, any 8th grade almighty would be life-threatening. Before meeting up with Gu Taishu, she needed someone to escort her. Great. Lu Chui was grateful. She immediately sensed Gu Taishu's direction. After a while, she opened her eyes and pointed to the north. The north should be in the direction of the martial yard. Brother Taishu is in the martial yard. At the mention of the martial yard, Lu Chui's bright eyes dimmed. The martial yard was the gathering place for the challengers of the supreme heavenly demon faction. There was a martial tower there, which was of great benefit to the challengers of the heavenly demon faction. The students of the supreme heavenly demon faction spent most of their time in the martial tower. Gu Taishu was in the martial yard, so he was probably near the martial tower. Or rather, he was with the demonic lady of the supreme heavenly demon faction. Su Yu didn't notice the strange look on her face. He looked to the north and leaped into the air. 3 days later, the periphery of the bookyard was filled with pitch-black trees that were only 200 feet thick. It wouldn't be long before they reached the edge of the bookyard. "I've sensed Brother Taishu's aura. He's nearby." Lu Chui's pretty face broke into a soul-stirring smile. He was originally in the martial tower of the martial yard. There could only be one explanation for his appearance here. He had received a distress message from the escaped Purple Cloud Palace and followed Lu Chui's aura to come to their rescue. This was why Lu Chui was gratified and even excited. Gu Taishu was still affectionate and loyal to her. Had he come? Su Yu looked at Lu Chui and thought for a moment. He said, "Miss Lu, if one day Gu Taishu betrays the Purple Cloud Palace, what will you do?" Lu Chuyi's smile faded, and she stared at Su Yu in surprise. Why do you ask? He could tell that she was a little unhappy, because Su Yu had questioned the person she loved the most in her heart. It's just a hypothesis, Su Yu said. Looking at Lu Chuyi's unhappy expression, a trace of pity welled up in the depths of his heart. Lu Chuyi said expressionlessly, My heart belongs only to him. If he betrays the Purple Cloud Palace, I will follow him without regret. Not regretting even in death? Su Yu sighed inwardly. He believed that Lu Chuyi would do what she said. In fact, she had already done it once. She would rather die to obtain the Book of Yang for Gu Taishu than lose her chastity. She loved Gu Taishu more than her own life. In a trance, Su Yu seemed to see Xia Jingyu's figure. There was once a woman like her who loved Su Yu more than her own life. Take care, Miss Lu. We'll part ways here. Su Yu turned around, stepped on the void, and flew away. Having said that, Su Yu had repaid her kindness, and there was no more entanglement between them. Leaving? Your vital energy hasn't recovered yet, and it's very dangerous for you to be alone. Why don't you come with me to see Brother Taishu? He will protect you. Lu Chuyi hurriedly caught up with him and tried to stop him. Su Yu shot off into the distance without looking back. For your own good, please don't mention my name in front of Gu Taishu. Watching Su Yu's resolute departing figure disappear into the horizon, Lu Chuyi suddenly felt a sense of melancholy. There seemed to be something missing in her heart. Tears welled up in her eyes, and Lu Chuyi muttered to herself in a low voice, I'm sorry, I didn't have the courage to know if you are in you. Some answers had long been revealed in her heart, but she had lost the courage to face them. Before long, the space in the distance was filled. Gu Taishu's handsome and tall figure rushed over as fast as lightning. However, the anticipation in Lu Chuyi's eyes shattered inch by inch. It was because Gu Taishu wasn't the only one who had come. There was an exquisite woman in a black dress, with skin whiter than snow, and features as beautiful as a painting. Exquisite was because her face was rare in the world. It was so beautiful that it seemed like a sculpture, full of illusion. Lu Chuyi recognized that face. It was the #1 beauty of the demonic path, Han Fei. She was also the #1 person of the demonic path, one of the 4 great starry sky elites of the Jiuzhou continent. In terms of talent, no one in the central continent could compare to her, including Gu Taishu. No matter in which aspect, Lu Chuyi couldn't compare to her. The two of them descended rapidly, stepping on the clouds of the 9 heavens. Lu Chuyi restrained the emotions in her eyes and walked forward with a happy expression. She said, Brother Taishu, you're here? Gu Taishu landed, nodded, and said immediately, Is the Book of Yang still in your hands? Hearing this, Lu Chuyi felt a stabbing pain in her heart. Shouldn't he be most concerned about her safety? It turned out that the person he had come to rescue wasn't her, but the Book of Yang. Shaking her head bitterly, Lu Chuyi suppressed the sadness in her heart and said, The Book of Yang was taken by Qian Feng of the Heavenly Knife region. Chuyi was useless and didn't look after the Book of Yang. Disappointment and anger flashed across Gu Taishu's face. He was disappointed that the Book of Yang was lost. He was angry that the Book of Yang was lost by Lu Chuyi. We're late. The Book of Yang has been taken. Gu Taishu turned his head and said to Han Fei. Han Fei shook her head indifferently. Find the Heavenly Knife region and get it back. Her eyes sized Lu Chuyi up and down and she said, Is she your fiancée? Gu Taishu smiled. It was arranged by the faction. As a disciple, I can't do anything about it. Hearing this, Lu Chuyi's heart trembled, and she looked at Gu Taishu in disbelief. Yes, there was the matchmaking of the elders and even the leader of the faction, but before that, weren't they already in love with each other? Was the meticulous care and concern of the elders and the leader of the faction also the arrangement? Her heart felt as if it had been stabbed by a knife, and it was bleeding. Han Fei nodded her snow-white chin and withdrew her gaze, as if she had lost interest in Lu Chuyi. Let's go back to the Marshal Tower. I believe the Heavenly Knife region will also gather at the Martial Tower. This year's Martial Tower is a little different from the past. They must have received the news and will gather here. When the time comes, I'll ask for the Book of Yang and the Book of Yin to read. Gu Taishu said, All right, I'm willing to help Fei-er. However, Fei-er should leave first. I have something to tell Lu Chi, Gu Taishu said. Han Fei didn't even look at Lu Chi. She flew in the direction of the Martial Tower. After she left, the smile on Gu Taishu's face disappeared. He put his hands behind his back and looked at Lu Chi indifferently. He said, They reported that you have been subdued by the Heavenly Knife region and that you are seriously injured. Can you tell me how you escaped back? I heard that Qian Feng wanted to lay his hands on you. In other words, Lu Chi had probably used her innocence in exchange for her life. Right now, she might already have a dirty body. Sensing Gu Taishu's questioning gaze, Lu Chi was still afraid that he would misunderstand, despite her discomfort. She hurriedly said, Don't misunderstand, I was rescued by someone. Qian Feng didn't succeed. Brother Taishu, you know me well. I won't lie to you. There was a pleading look on her face. Is that so? Gu Taishu's expression softened a little, and a smile appeared on his face. He flew down and comforted her. Don't be afraid. I was just worried that you would be bullied. It's good that you're fine. By the way, where is the person who saved you? Why haven't I seen him? I haven't had the time to thank him for saving me. Gu Taishu's tenderness made Lu Chi feel as if she had been pardoned. She cherished his gentleness very much. She said, The benefactor doesn't want to reveal his name. He has left on his own. She hadn't forgotten Gu Taishu's words. Don't tell anyone about his existence. Gu Taishu frowned. But with his understanding of Lu Chi, he knew that she wouldn't lie. He believed that Qian Feng hadn't succeeded. Chui, don't take the matter between me and Han Fei to heart. Senior brother's kindness to her was arranged by the faction. His purpose was to befriend the supreme heavenly demon faction and gain some benefits from them. My feelings for you have never changed. Lu Chi's pretty face blushed, and a sweet smile bloomed like a spring flower. Is that true, Brother Taishu? Gu Taishu smiled gently. Of course it's true. He stretched out his arm, intending to pull Lu Chi into his arms naturally. But Lu Chi quietly moved away. She lowered her head and said shyly, Brother Taishu, don't do this. A hint of annoyance flashed in Gu Taishu's eyes, but he quickly concealed it. He said, Haha, senior brother was careless. Chui shouldn't have contact with the opposite sex before her cultivation is consummated. Lu Chi's body stiffened imperceptibly. Don't blame yourself, Brother Taishu. After thinking for a while, Gu Taishu's eyes flashed. Chui, I wonder which level of your cultivation of the cultivation of the cultivation of the cultivation of the technique? When can you reach the consummate level? Upon hearing this, a hint of panic flashed in Lu Chi's eyes. No, not much. I'm at the consummate level of the second level. I'm still one level away from the final consummate level. 3 years ago, you reached the consummate level of the second level. It's been 3 years, and you've only succeeded in cultivating one level? Gu Taishu frowned. He hadn't touched Lu Chi, the goddess, because he was fulfilling the faction's promise. Lu Chi was cultivating a top-notch cultivation method passed down by the Purple Cloud Palace, the cultivation method of the Purple Cloud Palace. Its level was unknown, but it was extremely powerful. Only women with pure bodies could cultivate it, and they couldn't touch the opposite sex during the cultivation. Once the taboo was violated, the cultivation method would regress, and the cultivation difficulty would increase several times. It was almost equivalent to wasting all the previous effort. Gu Taishu was wary of the faction's rules. Although he had wanted to meddle in it many times, he had to suppress his impulse. The cultivation of the Purple Cloud Palace gets harder as it progresses. Lu Chi's heart was pounding. Gu Taishu made a sound of acknowledgement and didn't take it to heart. Cultivate in peace, senior brother. There's no hurry. Okay, Lu Chui said softly, her voice as soft as a mosquito's. In the martial tower of the martial yard, many people who have obtained destinies have appeared. All the influences have received the news and are gathering in the martial yard, Gu Taishu said. You should go in that direction first. You'll catch up with Han Fei soon, and she'll take you there. Lu Chui said, What about you, senior brother? Gu Taishu chuckled. I still have some matters to attend to, and I'll catch up with you soon. Lu Chui thought about it and flew away. Hurry up, senior brother. Nodding lightly, Gu Taishu watched Lu Chui leave. His face darkened, and he stared coldly in the direction where Su Yu had left. Hiding your identity after saving Lu Chui, humph. Do you think I'll believe you? Gu Taishu was concerned about Lu Chui's savior. If he hadn't verified it himself, he wouldn't have been able to get over it. Saving someone's life, but not expecting anything in return. Who would believe that there was nothing fishy about it? Either Lu Chui was hiding something, or her savior was up to no good. The latter was most likely. Perhaps his filthy body had already possessed Lu Chui, and she was unaware of it. Chapter 1005. After Su Yu bid farewell to Lu Chui, he walked toward the edge of the book garden. The threat of the book garden master was still there. As long as he did not leave the book garden, he would not be safe. After another half a day, Su Yu had reached the edge of the forest. He was surrounded by trees that were about 100 feet tall, and he could faintly see the steep mountain ranges in the distance. On those mountains, one could vaguely see broken swords and broken blades stuck straight into the ground. Traces of sharp aura reverberated in the mountains. Is that the martial yard? Su Yu muttered to himself. The flower garden and the book garden had already been to the 5 great gardens. The former had obtained the garden master and the honey of 100 flowers, while the latter had obtained Mo Jidao's book of Yang. Their gains were not to be belittled. He wondered if there was anything special about the martial garden. With a flash of his eyes, Su Yu strode toward the martial yard. But at this moment, he subconsciously turned his head to look. A trace of remnant flame slowly dissipated in the forest, leaving behind a blazing aura. Su Yu, who possessed the magical space ability, could feel the faintly discernible space energy reverberating. Who is it? Su Yu was on guard. Just now, someone tore the void from behind him without making a sound. If not for his sensitivity to space, he wouldn't have noticed it at all. Could it be the book garden master? Su Yu pondered for a moment, then shook his head slightly in denial. If it were the book-yard master, she would have struck long ago, and not sneakily. Being followed by a mysterious person who could travel through the void, Su Yu's eyes became more serious. When did that person start following him? What was he trying to do? With caution, Su Yu walked quickly toward the martial yard. But at this moment, a piercingly cold aura filled with boundless killing intent shot over from afar. Su Yu turned around and looked at him again, killing intent appearing between his brows. Gu Taishu. Unexpectedly, he actually caught up. Gu Taishu also noticed Su Yu's presence from afar, and his handsome face immediately became gloomy. He had imagined who had saved Lu Chui, but he had never imagined that it would be Su Yu. That ant from the Zhenlong continent. In the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion, Lu Chui had treated this ant in a special way, and he seemed to have an indescribable friendship with Lu Chui. He had seen all this with his own eyes. As he recalled how Lu Chui had deliberately concealed the fact that the person who had saved her was Su Yu, Gu Taishu felt like he had been deceived. Anyone could imagine what it meant for their own woman to hide the ambiguous relationship between them from her fiancé. Yuan. Come on. Yes. You. Gu Taishu flew over, his eyes filled with rage. How could Su Yu have known that his good intentions for Lu Chui's sake would cause Gu Taishu to misunderstand him even more? As he stared at Gu Taishu, Su Yu suppressed his desire to kill him. Firstly, he did not have absolute confidence that he could kill Gu Taishu, especially after witnessing Gu Taishu's peak pure divine decree. His strength was unfathomable. Secondly, his true chi had yet to recover and his strength had yet to reach its peak. Even though the three of them were at their peak, they were not willing to waste time here. If they wanted to kill him, they would have plenty of chances to leave the glittering jewel wonderland. Why was there a need to rush? The glittering jewel wonderland opened once every 100 years, and it wasn't used for fighting. Gu Taishu was also aware of this. If it were any other trial taker, he would have subdued him and interrogated him severely. But Suyu was someone he knew. A guy who had killed a being like Xue Di with his own hands must have some unknown, terrifying tricks up his sleeve. He did not want to fight Suyu to the death now. Once he had gathered enough opportunities in the glittering jewel wonderland and reached the all creations level, would he still be afraid of not being able to kill Suyu? Their gazes collided in the air, causing intense sparks to fly. Powerful murderous intents surrounded each other, causing the pitch-black forest around them to wither rapidly and turn into nothingness. The mountain rock between them crumbled with a loud crash, and a dull thunderclap erupted. I came to the Wonderland this time to look for the last drop of the ancient spiritual beast's blood. Once I find it, it will be your doomsday. Gu Taishu pointed at Suyu from afar, his murderous intent thick. He had reached the peak of the 9th grade Almighty a long time ago. If he wanted to, it wouldn't be difficult for him to enter the all creations level. However, he had suppressed his cultivation because he was not going to break through to the ordinary all creations level. Instead, he was going to refine a 9-fairy elixir and complete the complete ancient spiritual body of the 9 transformations of real spirit. Once he succeeded, he would rarely meet a worthy opponent in the all creations level. Even Mo Tianxian, who was known as the first person below the mortal fairies, might not be his match. By then, on the Jiuzhou continent, unless the 9 great prefectures' kings and the Duanxian cliff master protected him, no one would be able to save him. Whose doomsday is it? You'll find out the moment you close your eyes, Suyu said indifferently. Both of them were brimming with murderous intents, each with a firm determination to kill the other. At that moment, a cold smile suddenly spread across the void. Ha ha ha, why don't you two die together? The voice was hollow and overlapping, sounding very mysterious. Who else could it be but the Bookyard Master? The sound of space tearing reverberated above their heads, and a book shrouded in black, white, and blue lights broke through the air. The Bookyard Master? Suyu's eyes turned cold. It had been a few days, but it was still easily found. The people of the Heavenly Knife region must have suffered heavy casualties. After being hunted by the Bookyard Master for so long, those who could escape from the Bookyard could not be more than 5. Gu Taishu put his hands behind his back and looked over coldly. Who are you? Do you have the right to interrupt when we are talking? Get lost. The Bookyard Master had no idea of Gu Taishu's depth. She sneered mockingly. Ignorant challenger, how dare you be so arrogant in my territory? I just want to take his life. Fine, since I've started killing, I'll send you on your way too. When she finished, the magnificent all creation's mighty force pressed down like a heavenly curtain, enveloping them. Upon hearing that, Gu Taishu glanced at Suyu and sneered contemptuously. Take his life? I think you've stayed in the glittering jewel wonderland for too long and are a frog in a well. A mere stage 1 all creations dares to threaten to take his life? It was not that Gu Taishu was flattering Suyu, but it was the truth that he knew. If Suyu really wanted to kill the Bookyard Master, it would be a piece of cake. At the same time, he was unwilling to admit that Suyu, whom he regarded as his mortal enemy, was a small, insignificant character in the eyes of others. Wouldn't that weaken his reputation? The Bookyard Master was stunned. She could vaguely sense Gu Taishu's power, but Suyu was just a 9th grade fairy, wasn't he? Swaying her body slightly, the Bookyard Master sneered. You challengers are still so fond of flaunting your power. Do you really think I'll fall for your tricks? When she finished, the all creation's mighty force condensed into a colossal phantom 1,000 feet wide, which came crashing down. The target was none other than Gu Taishu. Gu Taishu's face was expressionless, his eyes full of contempt. You overestimate yourself. Gu Taishu's body emitted 9 bright rays of light, which seemed to be 9 major acupoints. The purple light on his right arm was especially bright. He clenched his right fist, which was filled with purple light. With one hand behind his back, he punched toward the sky. Boom! The phantom of the giant book seemed majestic, but it was shattered into several halves by Gu Taishu's punch. The remnant force of the punch surged toward the bookyard master, who was surrounded by a radiant tricolored glow to protect herself. With a loud bang, the tricolored rays of light shattered as well. The book garden master's true form was sent flying backward from the impact. Her stubborn and self-opinionated tone was now filled with astonishment. This punch. No, it's your physique. The ancient body of 9 spirits. How could it be? How could the bloodline of an upper-class race appear in your body? The bookyard master's tone was full of shock. Gu Taishu said contemptuously, You're nothing more than this. As he spoke, he casually raised his fist again and blasted it toward her. With a shrill scream, the bookyard master was sent flying into the clouds. Her body was damaged, as if she had suffered a very serious injury. Then, Gu Taishu rolled up his sleeves and pulled the bookyard master over. He sneered. Rumor has it that the 6th yard can be opened when all 5 yard masters are gathered. I wonder if the other yard masters have also been captured. With a flip of his palm, he had severely injured the All Creation's yard master and captured her alive. It had only taken a moment. Witnessing the whole process, Su Yu's heart was filled with awe. This was probably just the surface of Gu Taishu's strength. However, right at that moment, Su Yu's eyes suddenly shot toward Gu Taishu's back like lightning. A crack in the void appeared behind him, and a tender, fair hand reached out from the crack abruptly, grabbing the bookyard master in Gu Taishu's palm. Gu Taishu raised his eyebrows. Come out. His right hand gripped the bookyard master tightly and abruptly exerted force to pull it out. A delicate cry was immediately heard from the crack in the void. Accompanied by the shrill cry of a phoenix, a large mass of raging flames flew out from the crack. Su Yu turned his eyes and fixed his gaze on it. It was a sweet and adorable little girl, stepping on a flaming phoenix, who had been forcibly pulled out from the crack in the void by Gu Taishu. The sweet girl was calm in the face of danger, and her right hand, which had been grabbed, suddenly surged with orange flames. Gu Taishu sensed the anomaly in his palm and immediately let go. The sweet girl was freed, and she somersaulted continuously, stepping on the fire phoenix and flying out of the crack in the void. She dodged 1,000 feet away from Gu Taishu and stared at the bookyard master in his hand from afar. The sweet girl was no more than 18 years old. Her skin was delicate and smooth, flawless, and her facial features were delicate and adorable. She wasn't exactly beautiful, but she had the innocence and sweetness of a leading girl, which was exceptionally endearing. However, if one were to neglect her strength and the fire phoenix beneath her feet, it would be equivalent to having 1 foot in the king of hell. Gu Taishu's cultivation was at the peak of the 9th grade almighty, but the hints of danger emanating from his body indicated that things weren't as simple as they seemed. The fire phoenix beneath his feet was an all creation's demonic beast comparable to the bookyard master, and it was extremely ferocious. Gu Taishu looked at his palm, which had a trace of a scorch mark left on it. There was a crystal-like crystal fragment embedded in his palm. Grass of crystallization? Gu Taishu's face turned solemn, and the purple energy on his palm swept past, shaking off all the grass of crystallization before it could reproduce. Raising his head to gaze at the pure and sweet girl, Gu Taishu's expression became much more solemn. Are you the second lady, Dongfang Tianfeng? Dongfang Tianfeng? Su Yu found her unfamiliar, as he had never heard of this woman's name. However, there was no doubt that the mysterious person who had been stalking Su Yu just now was undoubtedly this woman. To be able to exchange blows with Gu Taishu and not be at a disadvantage, her strength was evident. Moreover, Gu Taishu was so arrogant, yet he was afraid of this woman, which made Su Yu even more apprehensive. The young girl, who looked like a leading girl, rubbed her wrist and glared at him. "You've hurt me. Tell me, how are you going to compensate me?" Gu Taishu retracted his murderous intent. Not only was he not annoyed by her attack, but he smiled instead. "I had eyes but failed to recognize Miss Tianfeng in time. It's my fault." Looking at the bookyard master in his hand, Gu Taishu said generously and heartily, "Since Miss Tianfeng wants the bookyard master, I'll make it up to you and give it to you as a gift." It was obvious that Gu Taishu was currying favor with this little girl. Su Yu was secretly surprised. He knew that Gu Taishu wasn't just a student of the Purple Cloud Palace, but he was also inextricably linked to the Central Prefecture's king. His status was far beyond the comprehension of ordinary people. For someone like him to deliberately befriend the leading girl in front of him, what kind of background did he have? If Su Yu knew that Dongfang Tianfeng came from the great eastern continent, the ancient family that had produced two mortal fairies, he wouldn't be so surprised. The number one family in the world, the great Oriental family. Moreover, Dongfang Tianfeng herself was one of the four great starry sky elites of the current generation, and her strength might not be weaker than Gu Taishu's. How could Gu Taishu not make friends with such a noble person with such outstanding talent and status? Anyway, his goal wasn't the 6th yard, but the last drop of real spirit blood. Dongfang Tianfeng pouted and raised her chin like a proud little peacock. "At least you know what's good for you." Gu Taishu smiled and walked forward to offer the bookyard master to her. The first step of befriending her was considered a success. However, Dongfang Tianfeng didn't accept it. Instead, she said, "I don't want it." Gu Taishu's smile froze and he asked, "Miss Tianfeng, don't you want the bookyard master?" "No, I only want the garden yard master." Dongfang Tianfeng's bright and innocent eyes turned to Su Yu, and her eyes were shining with grievance. "The bookyard master was originally mine, but you took it away from me." In fact, when he saw Gu Taishu being poisoned by the grass of crystallization, Su Yu realized that Dongfang Tianfeng was the woman from the great Oriental family mentioned by the eldest senior brother of the Heaven's Craftsman faction. Could she have been secretly following him from the garden? However, Su Yu had no intention of pleasing Dongfang Tianfeng. He wanted to keep the garden yard master to open the 6th yard and obtain sublimations. "I'm sorry, the garden yard master didn't have your name engraved on it." "How can you say that?" Su Yu was expressionless, with no intention of giving in. Dongfang Tianfeng said angrily, "If I hadn't been delayed by something and arrived a step later, the garden yard master would have been mine." Su Yu turned his head and cupped his fist. "I have matters to attend to and have no time to entertain you. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave now." Secretly watching the scene, Gu Taishu's lips curled into a playful smile. He had offended the second daughter of the great Oriental family. Haha, he really didn't know his place. Dongfang Tianfeng didn't have to do anything. The glittering jewel wonderland had plenty of heaven rulers to fight for her, including the remaining 3 starry sky elites. "I know, so I'll use the bookyard of the bookyard to exchange for it with you." Dongfang Tianfeng pouted at Gu Taishu. "What are you waiting for? Send the bookyard master to me. I've never seen anyone as slow as you." The smile on Gu Taishu's lips froze, and his heart was filled with indignation. Giving the yard master that he had captured to Su Yu. What did Dongfang Tianfeng take him for? A servant that she could order around at will? It would have been fine if she had been given to someone else, but it was Su Yu. Chapter 1006. "Didn't you hear what I said?" Dongfang Tianfeng urged. There were many martial artists like Gu Taishu who wanted to curry favor with her. How could she be polite? Gu Taishu lowered his head to Su Yu and said with narrowed eyes, Miss Tianfeng, I think we can get the flower yard master without losing the book yard master. You mean I should join forces with you? Dongfang Tianfeng asked. Gu Taishu stared at Su Yu and nodded slowly. He didn't want to fight Su Yu alone, but with the second daughter of the great Oriental family, there was an 80% chance of winning. The great Oriental family wouldn't let Dongfang Tianfeng take the risk. She must have powerful treasures to protect herself. Su Yu could be eliminated with Dongfang Tianfeng's help. You're dreaming. However, Dongfang Tianfeng responded with contempt. If I could snatch it, would I have followed you until now? Dongfang Tianfeng said. Gu Taishu frowned. Had Dongfang Tianfeng discovered Su Yu's power? Dongfang Tianfeng was forced to snatch another yard master in exchange. It was obvious that she was afraid of Su Yu. My Feng'er told me that he has several dangerous things on him. I don't think it's necessary to take the risk. Dongfang Tianfeng touched the fire phoenix under her feet. Dangerous things? Gu Taishu didn't doubt her. Cut the crap and send the book yard master over. Dongfang Tianfeng yelled. Gu Taishu's facial muscles tightened as he pondered. His priority now wasn't to win Dongfang Tianfeng's heart, but to avoid offending her. Dongfang Tianfeng didn't lack people to curry favor with. She might not appreciate his flattery, but if he didn't, he would offend her. He couldn't offend Dongfang Tianfeng like Su Yu, so he could only swallow his anger. Holding the book yard master in his hand, he took 2 steps forward and stared at Su Yu. He handed the book yard master over with one hand without saying a word. Su Yu put his hands behind his back and said with a faint smile, Brother Gu, is this charity? Although I can't compare with your status in the blessed and heavenly lands, I won't accept handout. Miss Tianfeng wants to exchange for your flower yard master. If you're sensible, let's do it now. Su Yu looked surprised. Oh, so you're begging me. If that's the case, you don't look so good. Gu Taishu was annoyed and he narrowed his eyes. Su Yu, don't push your luck. Su Yu flicked his sleeves and turned around. Since Brother Gu thinks that I don't know what's good for me, is there still a need to talk? Dongfang Tianfeng, who was at the side, was anxious. She glared at Gu Taishu with her almond-shaped eyes. It was obvious that she was going to teach him a lesson if the negotiation failed. Gu Taishu's heart sank when he sensed Dongfang Tianfeng's dissatisfaction. Sure enough, it was hard to leave a good impression on Dongfang Tianfeng, but it was very easy to offend her. If he had known earlier, he would have pretended not to know Dongfang Tianfeng, and he would not have been in such a passive situation. Gu Taishu regained his composure and said, Brother Su, Lady Celestial Phoenix is willing to exchange the flower yard master for the book yard master. Brother Su, please give up your treasure. Without even turning his head, Su Yu calmly said, Speak louder, I can't hear you. The blue veins on Gu Taishu's forehead throbbed. He took a deep breath, raised his voice and repeated, Brother Su, please part with your treasure. I still can't hear you. Su Yu shrugged his shoulders. Gu Taishu's killing intent surged, and he resisted the urge to flick his sleeves and leave. For the last time, he used his genuine qi to produce the sound wave technique that shook the air. Please, Brother Su, part with your treasure. Did you hear me? Gu Taishu's face was gloomy. Su Yu finally came back to his senses and picked his ears. Yes, I finally heard you. Then, bring me the flower yard master. Gu Taishu snorted. Su Yu spread his hands. I didn't say I wanted to trade. I'm leaving, Brother Gu. See you next time. Waving his hand, Su Yu strode toward the center of the martial yard. Gu Taishu was furious. You're courting death. He had been teased again and again, but in the end, he still failed to exchange for the flower yard master, which finally infuriated Gu Taishu. Useless trash. Dongfang Tianfeng glared at him with her starry eyes. Give me the book yard master. Gu Taishu looked back coldly, his heart flickering with murderous intent. If not for the fact that he was not fully confident that he could keep Dongfang Tianfeng here, he would have struck and turned her into ashes. How many years had it been since he had suffered such humiliation? However, the reputation of the great Oriental family, the #1 family in the world, made Gu Taishu afraid to make a move. Swallowing his anger, he offered the book-yard master with both hands. "Humph! I'll do it myself." Dongfang Tianfeng grabbed the book-yard master unceremoniously, threw down 2 extremely precious materials as compensation, and left. Gu Taishu stared in the direction in which the 2 of them had left, his murderous intent overflowing. "When I've refined the 9 fairy elixir and become a complete body of 9 spirits, your great Oriental family will have to show me some respect." Humph! Su Yu flew toward the center of the martial yard, looking behind him from time to time. He could feel that Dongfang Tianfeng was still following him. This put Su Yu in a somewhat passive position. With her around, without a safe environment, Su Yu could not consume the honey of 100 flowers and cultivate his cultivation technique with 10 times the comprehension. It seemed like he needed to find a safe place. Half a day later, at the edge of the bookyard where Su Yu, Gu Taishu, and Dongfang Tianfeng had appeared, a bronze-colored bull stepped out of the crack in the void, flickering in all directions. The scent of the body of 9 spirits? The bronze-colored bull sniffed the surrounding air, a hint of surprise flashing in its eyes. How could there be a person with the bloodline of a third-class race in the Jojo continent? However, it seems like only 1 spirit has been awakened, and it's an incomplete body. It won't be a problem, the bronze-colored bull muttered to itself. There's the scent of the student of the supreme heavenly demon faction here. It looks like he's not far away. The bronze-colored bull took a step forward and disappeared into the void. Half a day later, Su Yu left the bookyard and came before a mountain curtain of mountains. There were tens of thousands of mountains, and every one of them was forged from various kinds of broken weapons. The broken weapons were oddly shaped, and many of them were extremely huge. They didn't look like weapons used by humans. Many challengers were busily searching for broken weapons with spiritual energy in the mountains, big and small. Along the way, the number of challengers seen here far exceeded the sum of the flower yard and the bookyard. Almost half of the influences had gathered in the martial yard. According to Mo Tianxian, the martial yard was located in the center of the 5 yards, and it was considered the center. Many influences would choose to gather in the martial yard, so it was not surprising that there were many people. However, it was precisely because of this that once the martial disaster broke out in the martial yard, the casualties were the most severe. Almost 40% of the challengers were eliminated immediately. The disaster of books has yet to come, and the disaster of martial arts has yet to come, Su Yu thought to himself. There were still 3 days before the disaster of books broke out, and he had already read a book of life. Barring any accidents, he would definitely incur the disaster of books. Each disaster was stronger than the one before it. The disaster of flowers should be the easiest disaster to overcome, but the disaster of books might not be so easy. With some trepidation, Su Yu stepped into the core of the martial yard. Almost half of the strong heaven rulers had gathered there. Figures could be seen everywhere, and it was quite lively. When he reached the center, the crowd even seemed crowded. Each mountain was occupied by different influences, and different flags were planted there. As far as the eye could see, tens of thousands of flags were fluttering, and it was quite a spectacular sight. What shocked Su Yu was that among the tens of thousands of flags, he found the flag of the Red Blood Palace. After passing through 2 yards, he had finally found his own people. He walked quickly and landed on the mountain with the flag of the Red Blood Palace, but found that the tent at the top of the mountain was empty. Chapter 1007. There was no such thing as leaving a flag, but not a trace of the person. Right at this moment, a delicate shout sounded out from behind him. "It's really you, Su Yu Xian." When Su Yu turned his head to take a look, he saw a well-maintained and well-endowed middle-aged woman standing coldly behind Su Yu. She was staring at him furiously. Fairy Ling. Su Yu was surprised. She was the Tianya auction house's cabinet master and Gongsun Wuxie's aunt. Fairy Ling's face was frosty. Long time no see, how have you been? Your cultivation has improved a lot. Although it had been a long time, Fairy Ling still couldn't forget the lovesickness seed that Yinmu had planted in her body and allowed Su Yu to control her. Su Yu smiled awkwardly and changed the topic. Fairy Ling, are you here to visit Gongsun Wuxie? How has she been these days? How are our Red Blood Palace's people? Fairy Ling replied calmly, she's fine, so you don't need to see her. But your Red Blood Palace's people aren't in a good situation. Su Yu had long felt that something was amiss with the Red Blood Palace. By the way, where are the Red Blood Palace's people? What are you doing? Su Yu asked. Fairy Ling furrowed her brows and was unwilling to answer, but after some thought she said, even if you know, you can't help them. They've been challenged by the challengers of the Heavenly Knife region, and they're fighting each other. I heard that you stole something from the Heavenly Knife region, and they're here to settle the score. Had the Heavenly Knife region also arrived? Su Yu asked, how many people are there? According to their estimations, they should have been almost completely annihilated by the book garden owner. 3. Including that person, that's 4, Fairy Ling said. The other 3 should be Qian Feng, Zhao Li, and the others. As for that person, who was he? How's the battle going? Su Yu asked indifferently. Fairy Ling was surprised. Oh? You don't seem to be in a hurry. They are your fellow disciples. They were indeed from the same faction as Su Yu, but only a few of them truly treated Su Yu as one of them. Su Yu had not forgotten that during the Fengyan Great Meet, during the selection process, the people from the inner sanctum had all hoped that Su Yu would not enter. He would never forget that Mo Tianxian had transported Su Yu to the garden alone. Now that the Red Blood Palace's people were in trouble, what reason did he have to save them? I just want to know if Bing Wuxin, Gongsun Wuxie, and Bai Shanliang are among them, Su Yu said concisely. Fairy Ling smiled faintly and said, indeed, there are still people who I'm worried about. You don't have to worry about Gongsun Wuxie. She's in another yard. Bai Shanliang has long since left, and his whereabouts are unknown. Only Bing Wuxin is here. Su Yu asked, where are they fighting? Fairy Ling pointed to the center of the area surrounded by countless mountains. There was a black obsidian pagoda with 100 floors. Its entire body was made of a strange metal that flickered with a dark light. Broken weapons and broken blades were all over the tower. Among them, there was no lack of incomplete semi-manufactured celestial artifacts. That's the Martial Tower, the most important place in the Martial Yard, and also the safest place in the glittering jewel wonderland. Fairy Ling said, once you enter, apart from the challengers, no other living beings can enter. The tower's solid and indestructible body is something that even a mortal fairy can't do anything to. Su Yu asked, are you saying that they are in the tower? Fairy Ling shook her head slightly. The Martial Tower hasn't opened yet. There's still half a day before it opens on the night of the full moon. The people of the Red Blood Palace aren't in the Martial Tower, but in the arena set up to fight for the Martial Tower. It's on the other side of the Martial Tower. Su Yu asked, how's the battle going? There are only 3 or 4 people from the Heavenly Knife region. We, the Red Blood Palace, have the absolute advantage in numbers, so we shouldn't be at a disadvantage, right? Do you think the Red Blood Palace can compete with the power of a region? Moreover, they have that person keeping watch, while your Red Blood Palace's chief disciple, Bing Wuxing, has never met up with your Red Blood Palace. Even though there are only 4 of them, they still manage to inflict heavy casualties on your Red Blood Palace. Your beloved fiancé was also injured. Upon hearing that, Su Yu's face showed a hint of nervousness. Wuxin is injured? Judging from the challengers of the Heavenly Knife region, The only one who could pose a threat to her was Qianfeng. His strength was no less than Jimu's. It was inevitable that Bing Wuxin was no match for him. "Thank you for telling me." Su Yu cupped his fists and immediately flew to the other side of the martial tower. Fairy Ling wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. She wanted to say that Su Yu wouldn't be of any help if he went over. That was the battlefield of the almighty divine masters. What could a ninth-grade fairy do? Why rush over and walk right into the trap? After thinking for a moment, Fairy Ling stomped her feet and sighed helplessly. "Fine, I'll just follow him and act according to the situation to save him. This way, the young cliff master will owe me a favor, and it'll be much easier to bring him back to the severed fairy cliff in the future." When she finished speaking, her figure floated and approached slowly. Bypassing the majestic tower, they saw a huge mountain that had been flattened by someone on the land on the other side of the tower. The mountain was surrounded by a sea of people, and the flattened area was filled with a large number of challengers in blue robes. Judging by their attire, they were from the Red Blood Palace. There were also several challengers in different colored attire. Among them, Su Yu recognized Qianfeng and Zhaoli, as well as an 8th-grade almighty female challenger. Another person, dressed in light white robes, was standing outside the battlefield in a carefree manner. He was holding a pitch-black book in his hand, reading it quietly as if no one else was around. His temperament was ethereal, and he didn't seem like someone from the mortal world. It was a pity that a golden mask covered his face, and his true appearance couldn't be seen. Su Yu's pupils shrank slightly. Bai Lingtian. Back then, Jinmu had duplicated Bai Lingtian with a drop of his essence blood, and his combat prowess was only 70% of the original. Even so, he was still extraordinarily frightening. Bing Wuxin at her peak was no match for him at all. Su Yu recognized the person in an instant from the golden mask. He was the number one person among the younger generation of the Heavenly Knife region, Bai Lingtian. If his guess was right, the black book in his hand should be Mo Jidao's Book of Yin. All of a sudden, as if he had sensed something, Bai Lingtian closed the Book of Yin and lifted his eyes to look at Su Yu. His emerald eyes were like a pair of emerald green flowers, exceptionally dreamy and exceptionally dangerous. Gazing deeply into those emerald green eyes, Su Yu glanced casually at the battlefield. Qianfeng was indeed impressive. He was fighting against 10 people alone, and yet he wasn't at a disadvantage in the slightest. Instead, he managed to injure a late-stage, almighty strong man from the Red Blood Palace from time to time. Zhaoli was known as the second strongest man in the Purple Cloud Palace. Although he was a traitor, his combat prowess was still astonishing. He was fighting Tianyu and 6 8th-grade almighty alone, and he was doing it with ease. Tianyu's face showed signs of fatigue. As for the 8th-grade almighty female challenger, she was equally impressive. She was restraining Tang Ling and dozens of 7th-grade almighty single-handedly. Her combat prowess was incredible, and this was the result of Bai Lingtian's having yet to strike. If he were to strike, the situation would be completely one-sided, and there would be no suspense.